As Murakin suspected, the ring turned out to be the Rune of Molt. Thousands of years ago, the Rune of Malta was an object created for Bement, the first emperor, who was a demon lover. It was created during the Great Wars. This is a masterpiece that blocks all attacks below the 7th rank. How did it end up in the hands of ordinary bandits? Murakin couldn't understand it. Jin looked at the ring. The Rune of Malta, an item that will be offered to the Emperor of Bement in 5 to 6 years. During this time, the Academy and the press were hysterical about the discovery, so Jin remembered the location and date of its discovery very well. Jin stared at Aluk, who had blood bubbling in his mouth. He wanted to ask one question before this bandit dies. Jin had heard that Aluk had something to do with the Rankandel family. Was it true? It was a question that bothered Jin. Murakin approached Jin. He said he should have asked about it earlier. What answer does he want to hear from someone on his deathbed? Aluk laughed strangely with the last of his strength. Now he knew. The boy who killed him must be Jean Rankandel. I see. So he still failed. Aluk said his last words. He said Jin wouldn't be able to stop this man. Those were his last words. Aluk was no longer breathing. Jin assumed that Aluk Spiderman was not his real name. It was necessary to figure it out. The 7th-ranked swordmaster is a gang boss who has a connection with the Rankandels. Murakin didn't find it strange. One of Jin's ancestors ran the bar, having the 9th rank. Yes, but Jin wanted to understand who Aluk was talking about. We need to make sure, because he was going to become the head. You can't stop this man. Of course, these were the words of a vile thug. His words definitely imply some connection with Rankandel, but they are not necessarily trustworthy. Aluk said he knew Jin. Then the fact that he failed probably has something to do with the sword illusion. And the reason why Aluk pointed out his age and inability to stop this unknown is that Aluk was aware of the power struggle. Luna Rankandel had left her family, so she should have been removed from the list of suspects. Definitely not Mew. Anna and the twins, they are too young and inexperienced. The rest are not so smart and diligent to get involved in these family intrigues. The culprit must be someone who is sensitive to rank, who pulled the strings when he found out about Jin's talent. Namely, the eldest heir, Joshua Rankandel. No one else has that kind of influence. It doesn't matter if Jin jumped to conclusions or not, but he'll find out soon enough. The news spread throughout Arkan that Tessing had been destroyed. Destroyed thanks to a joint investigation by Zippel and Bement. The evil gang was destroyed in one day. The residents of Arkan were happy with this news. Jean was reading the latest newspaper. It said that an informant of Tessing, Arkan's criminal organization, had surrendered to the authorities. Tessing's internal informant, who was involved in human trafficking, said he felt remorse for his crimes. Jin praised Jet for a job well done. As Jin had expected, Jet had a strong survival instinct. He listened to every word uttered by the investigators and answered with the best possible answers. He would have been harassed by the Zippel family or Bement, so this is a very small price to pay for his life. Murakin clicked his tongue. He was unhappy because he wanted Jet to suffer and experience more pain. Anyway, Zippels and Bement got all the laurels, but Jin was not left empty-handed either. Murakin grinned, hinting at the ring and other things. Right, Jin received the Multer Rune, magical grimoires, and a victory over a 7th-rank sword master. He was quite satisfied with his acquisitions. At this point, Jilly voiced her concerns. The rank of Aluk does not mean that he is similar to others. Jin shouldn't be too careless just because he defeated Aloha. He should be careful next time. Jin replied that he understood about it. If Gilly, who was also on the 7th rank, had been in Aluk's place, then perhaps Jin would not have survived that night. He will be careful and will not let victory turn his head. It was time to move on. Because of Jet's efforts, no one will even think of looking for them, so they could safely go to the next point. They will go to Tikkun, an independent city. Murakin didn't know about this place, but Jilly was aware of it. There was a large information house in Tikkun. Tikkun, an independent city. After the info offices of Rankandel, Zippel and Bement, this is the most reliable place. Murakin asked if Jin was going to find all the bad guys, as it was with Jet. Jin smiled. It certainly sounds good, but this is only one of the ways. Sailing on the ship, Jin thought about it. From now on, as he moves on, his memories from his past life are in priority, so you need to come up with a goal. However, this is not all. It is also necessary to study everything related to Vishkalai Viliano, Buber and Kanzella, plus Aluk's past and his affairs with the Rankandels, Colin ruins and forbidden magic. There was so much to check. The most suitable place for this is the 7 Flowers in Tikkun. Murakin said that he had found out what trace Chenmi had left. It was light magic. Jin was surprised to hear about light magic. It seemed to him that she had disappeared in ancient times. Murakin replied that it might be so. 15 centuries ago, about 500 famous magicians of the Zippel family plotted to kill Chenmi, but they all failed. That's probably why no one, including Jin, knew about Chenmi. Zippels erase from history everyone who gets on their nerves. This is a distinctive feature of the Zippel family. That's why there are no records of Chenmi. Rankandels cannot overcome the limits of their energy. Therefore, they will become the same in the near future. They will be forgotten, just like Chenmi. Therefore, learning to learn the Chenmi spell was incredibly important. Muraken was going to demonstrate Chenmi's spell. Jin moved a little closer to see everything better. Muraken said with a grin that Jin should watch and remember. Maybe that's what he needed the most right now. In Muraken's right hand, mana began to gather and solidify. Naturally, Jin stared intently at the mana sphere, waiting for a bright result. However, the ball of energy was drowned in black. Jin was somewhat surprised. Isn't it light magic, so why is it dark? The moment he thought, before the mana sphere dissipated and disappeared, a bright, white light appeared, like hot, red-hot steel. The moment the room lit up, Jin reflexively shuddered and groaned. The reason was the blinding light that filled the room. It was as if he was looking at the sun at the height of noon. The light seemed like a giant needle piercing his retina. Seeing Jin's condition, Muraken burst out laughing. Jin really wanted to give Muraken a nice uppercut for telling him to watch carefully, but the power of the spell gave him goosebumps. If he could use this spell at will during battle, fighting a stronger opponent wouldn't be a problem, including scenarios where he needed to escape. The spell was useful in both offense and defense. This spell is called Flash Bang. She was Chenmi's most valuable magic. Jin has indeed acquired something very valuable. Compared to Chenmi, Easter's grimoire was somewhat ambiguous. This is a coded system that even annoyed him, the great Muraken. He wasn't sure about the contents, but he was wondering if it would do any good. Jin told him to just leave it. One day he himself will bring the grimoire to a good decryptor. A week later, Tikkun, an independent city. A city on a small island in the south of the central continent, which is not related to either the Rankandel family or the Zippel family. Although the population is small, it is a popular place for tourists, as you can watch the ocean from anywhere in the city. Jilly was impressed by the beauty of the Tikkun. The streets looked as if they were alive. Tikkun contrasted sharply with Arkan. Unlike the amazing landscapes, Arkan was filled with people devoid of hope. On the other hand, in Tikkun, the ocean was always in sight no matter where they looked. Jilly suggested looking for a place where they could stay. Jin was all for it. He decided to explore the city center first. Muraken jumped out and suddenly returned to his normal human form. He expressed his dissatisfaction. He didn't want Jin to choose a crappy bedbug like in Arkan again. Jin didn't particularly like the sudden transformation. He told Muraken 1,000 times not to turn in front of everyone. Although Tikkun had a small population, but because of the size, the density is high. Being transformed in the middle of the road was an easy way to lose anonymity. Muraken replied that no one cared. And so it was. There didn't seem to be a single person nearby who would have noticed the transformation of the cat into a human. However, it only seemed that no one cared. A little girl's surprised exclamation sounded. She said that the cat had turned into a man. Startled, Jin, Muraken, and Gilly turned their heads towards the voice. She asked how the black cat turned into a black-haired uncle. The girl said that she, Julia, wanted to learn how to do the same. A little girl, holding a small stuffed dragon in her hands, looked at them with stars in her eyes. Jin began to convince the girl that she just imagined everything. How could a cat turn into a human? The girl corrected Jean, saying that she was Julia, not a girl, and she saw everything correctly. The black cat turned into an uncle. Why did Mr. lie to her? They bought ice cream for a girl with a stuffed dragon. Although watching her happily eat a cold treat was cute, Jin was somewhat discouraged. He said he wasn't Mr. and he wasn't lie. Calling a 15-year-old Mr. was cruel. The girl did not let up. She talked about him being Mr. and lying to her. Jin wanted the girl not to tell anyone anything. Since he bought her ice cream, could she pretend she didn't see anything? Julia turned out to be a tough nut to crack. She told him not to make her lie. Gilly and Muraken were puzzling over how to solve this situation. Jilly sighed. They thought Julia was lost, so they took her to the garrison. But if the rumors spread, wouldn't the Zippel family catch them? At that moment, Muraken said that no one would believe the girl, so there was no reason to worry. She turned around and looked at him with a cold gaze. If Muraken had listened to her young master, then nothing would have happened. Fortunately, only a little girl witnessed Muraken's transformation. Otherwise, there would be a lot of problems. So they came to the garrison. Julia said she didn't like the garrison. They were constantly bothering her mom and bothering her. Jilly said it wasn't good. Are they using cruel methods and exploiting people? Jin suggested that the girl's mother could be a criminal. He decided to go inside first and check. After thinking about it, they still agreed that the best way out was to take her to the guards. Julia pouted and then accepted her fate. The guard recognized Julia. He shouted for them to bring the leader. Their little Miss Julia was here. Jin asked the guard if he knew this girl. The guard laughed. Julia was the daughter of their leader. Julia pointed her finger somewhere, saying that her mommy is coming. A tall woman approached them. She looked at least 2 meters tall, with broad shoulders and a knife scar on her left eye. It wouldn't be surprising if she ran several shady organizations like Teasing, but she was wearing a military uniform. It was hard not to notice the flashy icon of the head. The woman hugged Julia before lifting her in her arms. The leader, Jin, didn't think that was the only thing this woman was doing. Mother and daughter hugged. It even looked cute. The woman was telling her daughter not to go so far away anymore. The girl objected, saying that her mom does not play with her. The woman apologized. They will play for a long time after she finishes her work. The three onlookers couldn't find the words. The woman introduced herself as Alika Badger. She was the head of the Tikkun garrison. They shook hands. Jean also introduced himself, but only changed his last name to Gray. He said that the three of them were passing through in Tikkun, so they were tourists. Alika wanted to thank them somehow, so she asked if they needed anything. Jin asked her to recommend them a place to stay. Alika bent down and put her ear to the girl, who then began to whisper something. Alika thought for a while, wrote something on a piece of paper, stamped it and handed it to Jin. It was a simple letter. She said that it was a letter of recommendation with the seal of the head of the garrison. Wherever Jin goes, if he shows this letter, he will be welcome everywhere. Alika thanked them once again for finding her daughter. Picking up the letter of recommendation, Jin replied that they should thank her. After that, they left, following their backs with her gaze. Alika asked her daughter if the cat had really turned into a human. Julia replied that it was, but the trio didn't want to talk about it, so she pretended she didn't know. Alika stroked her with a smile. She said it was a good job, because everyone had their own secrets. Alika thought about it. Transformation is something that only dragons can do. The strength of the recommendation letter from the chief of the Tikkun garrison exceeded their expectations. Jin chose the most luxurious hotel on the outskirts of the city. On top of that, they were offered the most luxurious room. Jin, Murakan and Gilly were finally able to rest. Gilly was pleased. The service in this place was excellent. She only received such service when she was in Hufester. Murakan agreed with her. According to him, the bed was soft, like the filling of a strawberry pie. That's how the bed should be. He was impressed by the power of the letter of recommendation. Gilly said things were going well in Tikkun. Who would have thought that such luck would befall them immediately upon arrival? She asked if she could have the ice cream Julia was eating, too. This ice cream was popular in Tikkun. Jin told her not to ask about it anymore. She can order anything. Their visit was like a vacation trip. The three of them had been together since their time at Tempest Castle, but this was the first time they had encountered such hospitality. Gilly seemed especially happy because she was constantly humming a tune. Seeing how pleased she was, Jin was pleased. As soon as Gilly left the room, Murakan called Jin over. The dragon asked how Jin planned to get into the 7 colors. It won't be easy. Jin replied that he wanted to find one person first. 7 colors is the best information house in Tikkun. In its center is someone called the Noble Kashmir Sword, the famous swordsman that everyone knows. He was recommended for the role of a teacher of the initial skill of the Rankandel sword. Many young swordsmen from Rankandel begged him to train them, but he always refused. This is the only information known to the house. But 10 years later, he will reveal that he is actually a member of the imperial family of Bement, who uses the information gathered by the 7 flowers. With the exception of the intelligence departments of the Rankandels, Zippels, and the imperial family of Bement, 7 colors was the next best source of information. It was the most useful source before coming to power. The agency was an incredible group of information brokers, but no one knew that its leader was a member of the imperial family of Bement. He will receive sovereign power from Bement, the Zippel and Rankandel families, after which he will gain support as the first king of the independent city of Tikkun. A meticulous man who is not just skilled in fencing, but also has enough skill to hide for so long. Jin thought about it. Kashmir could support him. The problem was that it was necessary to get closer to him somehow. Shortly after leaving, Gilly returned to her apartment. However, her scared face didn't look like she ordered ice cream. She reported that something was wrong. There was no one in the loggia. All the staff and guests have disappeared. At this moment, dozens of footsteps could be heard approaching them from the corridor. It was definitely the sound of soldiers marching in steel boots. The stomping stopped at their door. Then, a quieter pair of steps approached him. A man came through the open door and put his hand on Gilly's shoulder. He asked if everything was fine here. Murakan didn't know anything about the man's identity, but their visitor was a famous swordsman that Jin and Gilly knew. It was a noble Kashmir sword. Meeting him was their main purpose of coming to Tikkun. They struggled to find a way to meet him, but to think that he would come right to their doorstep. A rather unexpected turn of events. Seeing the hand on Gilly's shoulder, Murakan was furious. He rushed forward and hugged Gilly. Jin quickly shouted to Murakan not to kill him. A fanged monster from the shadows appeared in front of the swordsman's face. Kashmir shuddered with fear. Jin was confused. Kashmir shouldn't be here. He shouldn't have found out about his affairs in Arkan. And they didn't cause any trouble, because they just arrived in Tikkun. More importantly, Kashmir wasn't alone. There were many soldiers outside the room. They were clearly brought in for a possible battle with the dragon. They would have entered the room if they just wanted to scare them. At this rate, there won't be a wet spot left of the Trinity. Jin told Murakin to calm down, because the space here was too small. If he fights here, Gilly might get hurt. Murakin had to calm down. He didn't want Gilly to get hurt in any way. Murakin asked Kashmir if he knew him. He was displeased with the swordsman's disrespectful tone. Did he really look down on everyone because he had a sword on his belt and sixers trailing behind him? Jin breathed a sigh of relief. Murakin restrained himself this time. Kashmir did not greet them, or rather Murakin, respectfully. Murakin continued to pour out curses and curses, because of which Kashmir was amazed. It was a well-known fact that dragons had incredible pride. Kashmir should have known this, but he still casually greeted Murakin. The presentation of Kashmir was ruined. He seemed very shocked. At that moment, he was sure that Murakin was a dragon. Otherwise, he wouldn't have frozen in place like a scarecrow after a cruel humiliation. Jin gently stopped Murakin. Then the dragon stopped, not taking his eyes off Kashmir. He would have torn his jaw apart several times if he hadn't been stopped. Murakin was angry for several reasons. The biggest one was that he made Strawberry Pie feel threatened. And then he came, disturbing their peace and showing disrespect. Jin told Kashmir to relax and put the sword away, if he certainly came without malicious intent. Jin said that he had heard a lot about Kashmir. Therefore, it can be said that he was well acquainted with him. Jin's demeanor was much calmer than Murakin's. Kashmir cleared his mind and avoided Murakin's gaze. How did the person in front of him know his name? He asked directly who Jin was. Without hesitation, Jin gave his real name. Jilly, who was standing next to him, was shocked by this. Murakin was also slightly surprised. Disclosure of his identity should be avoided at all costs. Of course, I was most surprised. Jin said that they had something to talk about. To do this, they need to move to a more suitable place. He will answer all his questions. Soon there were only 4 left in the task. Kashmir dismissed his soldiers. Jin thanked him for his trust and decision to communicate privately. Kashmir began to analyze the situation. He brought the soldiers after the report of the dragon's appearance. But it was a mistake that angered the dragon even more. Kashmir was sure that the ferocious man in front of him was the dragon. Such a feeling of incredible pressure could not have been created by man. If Jin hadn't stopped him, they would all have ended up in the next world. Analyzing the group in front of him, Kashmir naturally shifted his gaze to Jilly. The woman was Jilly McLaurin. He met her before he was kicked out of Bement's palace. Kashmir still remembered what outstanding skills she had demonstrated back then in the training hall. But, for some reason, he didn't feel her aura. He looked at the nail. Perhaps it was the reason for this. The boy in front of him was Rankandel. It's not like he's lying to him. However, he couldn't understand why Jin was accompanied by a dragon. So he directly asked Jin why he was with the dragon. Since ancient times, dragons have only dealt with magicians who have contracts with a god or with someone who has a special power. For example, not with Rankandels, but with Zippels. Kashmir also asked Jin if the Rankandel family knew about this. Jin simply replied that the family didn't know. Kashmir grinned awkwardly. If this is discovered, chaos will begin in the Rankandel family. But Jin shared a secret that could easily cost him his life. But something else was important. Jin asked why Kashmir came to the dragon. Once Jin revealed his secret to him, then he decided to tell him about his secret. It had to do with his daughter Julia. The reason Kashmir is here is because she told about a cat that turned into a man. Jin asked why he believed the child's words so easily. Kashmir added to his words that his daughter is not just a child, but a contractor as Mila. Jin was surprised by this. It was about the god of the eye himself. Jin finally understood why Kashmir and Alika trusted Julia's absurd story. Anyone who has made a contract with the god of sight will never be deceived by the eyes. There is no lie for them. Revealing such a truth required great courage. The contractor as Mueller received not only an absolute eye that allows him to see the truth, but also an all-seeing eye that allows him to see the future. All the rulers and leaders of the world were looking for the one who signed the contract with Asmil, with the hope and greed to avoid the uncertainty of the future. That's why most of Asmil's contractors were abused and used to their advantage, living the rest of their lives in poverty, especially considering the extreme actions of the Zippels and the imperial family of Bement. Everyone knew that they wanted to keep the contractors close to them at all costs. Jin asked if Kashmir was afraid to let them in on it. At that moment, Murakin intervened. Something was wrong. If Julia is a contractor, then where is her dragon? Murakin didn't feel his energy anywhere near her. The Asmila dragon was known for his excessive concern for the contractor, but he left the child alone. It was very strange. Combining the dragon's words with the image of Julia holding a dragon doll, Jin finally understood why Kashmir had come to them. For some reason, the dragon disappeared. That's why Kashmir came here urgently after learning about the presence of another dragon. Kashmir's face darkened. He told me that Julia's guardian dragon suddenly disappeared a year ago. He suggested that the Zippel family or the Bement Empire had a hand in this. Murakin couldn't believe it. It didn't make any sense. No dragon has ever been born that would be stupid enough to be kidnapped. And at the same time during the year, Murekin paused and asked Kashmir if her daughter was 5 years old. Kashmir replied that it was. After a while, Murekin continued. If Julia is actually an Asmil contractor, it means that without a dragon she will soon go crazy and become disabled. Kashmir's eyes filled with hopelessness. Anyone would be shocked to learn that their daughter would be bedridden for life. Asmil's contractors are able to see the future. People don't know, but this vision causes great damage even to the dragon's psyche. Now the girl was too young to distinguish a dream from reality, so nothing special has happened yet. If she continues to see the future without protection, as it is happening now, in a year or two her eyes will become uncontrollable. Jin asked Murekin to tell him in more detail. How will the vision of the future make Julia disabled? It was about causality. Those who know the future must follow what they have seen. If he doesn't, Asmil's punishment will begin. When a vision of someone's death appears, nothing can be changed. Contractors who violate this rule will eventually be destroyed. Even if they want to change their actions after seeing the future, Asmil's contractors must follow their fate. Thus, even if they see in the future that their brother is going to be killed, they should not tell him about it or stop the murder. From the very beginning, Kashmir's daughter lived in a world different from theirs. Judging by the expression of Kashmir, Murekin hit the bull's eye. He needs to find a guardian dragon as soon as possible and bring it to the child. There was not much way out. Kashmir's chest felt heavy. He felt his stomach clench at the thought of the terrible fate of a small, innocent child. Kashmir fell to his knees and lowered his head. He called Murekin a great dragon and said that he runs the 7 Colors Information Center. Kashmir was confident in his abilities, but for a whole year he could not find the guardian dragon. Kashmir was usually a very collected person. Although he was kicked out of the Bement imperial family, his sense of pride and self-esteem were very high. However, this was a situation where the daughter's life was at stake. Although they were not supported by any evidence, Kashmir did not doubt a single word spoken by the dragon. After all, he was in the presence of a dragon and a pure-blooded Rankandel. They wouldn't lie because it would tarnish their names. Murekin did not reject and did not agree. He said that the meeting with Julia upon arrival in Tikkun was not just a coincidence. Asmil asked for their help for his young contractor. Kashmir began to beg Murekin to help. The dragon stopped him with his hand, saying that he couldn't do anything even if he begged like that. To do this, you need to ask their leader. He pointed a finger at Jin. Jin told Kashmir to get on his feet. Although they are not close enough, but the question concerned the child's life. First, Kashmir should not lose hope. They better need to focus on finding Julia's keeper together. The man's eyes almost filled with tears. Jin could feel his anxiety and frustration. Kashmir lowered his head and said he would never forget Jin's kindness. It turned out better than Jin had planned. They could collaborate with Kashmir in 7 colors. But this was not a happy turn of events. No one will find joy in a quest that has a little girl's life at stake. If even the 7 flowers couldn't find the location of the guardian dragon, then they need information from the Rankandel or Zippel family. Since he had a mission as a temporary flag bearer, he could not ask for help from his family. In his current situation, he wanted to break some rules, but these actions would not help him in any way. At that moment, Murekin asked one question. Was Tikkun with the Zippel family? Jin replied that Tikkun was just a city. He wasn't attached to anyone. Tikkun was similar to Mammoth. However, one key difference between Tikkun and Mammoth was that the former had vast lands. The Zippels and Bement, some other kingdoms, as well as the Rankandels, of course, wanted to get the land of Tikkun. Murekin turned to Kashmir. If the 7 colors are so capable, then they must have information about the dragons. He needed this information. Kashmir replied that they knew which dragon was on which continent. Murekin told him to give him all the information about the dragons of the Bement Empire. He was going to fly to the Bement Empire and question the other dragons. Most of the Zippel dragons were his enemies, so he couldn't ask them. Almost 80% of the existing dragons were related to the Zippel family. Most of the rest were with the imperial family of Bement. And the rest, a very small part, were associated with smaller families or unknown contractors. Jin couldn't seem to believe it. Murekin chuckled. He said that this method is something like a last chance. There was nothing the dragons didn't know about. A small wooden house. A beautiful woman with silver hair was sitting inside. It was the silver dragon Quikantel. At that moment, a joyful girl ran up to her. She was waving a newspaper. Her name was Ania. She talked about how Jin was amazing. They were the same age, but Jin was already rank 5. Quikantel said that Ania is a good contractor, so she can also stat like Jin Rankandel. The girl was somewhat incredulous. Quinkandel said that unlike the child from the family, the guardian of which is a black-haired guy, Ania is a contractor of Ulta, the god of time. Before she could say even a few words, she felt a long-forgotten energy. She froze for a moment with her eyes wide open. Quikantel told Ania to lock herself at home and not come out until she returned. Ania asked if something serious had happened. The woman replied that it was nothing special. Just one blob came. She seemed angry. Silver dragon scales and claws appeared on her fingers. They flew for at least 2 days to a remote ocean territory near the Empire of Bement. When they approached the boundless ocean at a high altitude, Muraken slowly began to descend. They arrived early in the morning. There were no boats in the moonlit waters. Muraken was about to release his energy. Then Bement's dragons will come out on their own. He told Jin to hide well so he wouldn't get caught. Muraken began to radiate his energy, but Jin felt nothing. The special energy that only dragons could emit and identify was akin to dolphin echolocation. It was a signal that people couldn't detect. However, looking down at the ocean directly below Muraken, a ripple of waves formed. Jin remembered how Kashmir had passed on the list of active dragons in the territory of the Bement Empire. Muraken read the list thoughtfully. When he saw Quickhandle's name on the list, he couldn't help but swear. Jin asked if there was any problem. Muraken told him to give up on it. It was a dangerous idea, but there was something between the dragons, so maybe everything will work out. It was obvious that Muraken did not want to go into details. He told Jin that they had a long way to go. At that moment, Muraken was hailed by Kashmir. He called Muraken the Great Dragon. Muraken was embarrassed by this treatment, so he yelled at Kashmir. He just wanted to be called by his first name. Did he look like a sect leader? Kashmir bowed deeply. He will leave the salvation of his daughter to them. Before leaving, Muraken decided to say 2 things. Firstly, until her dragon returns, Kashmir should make her daughter tired every day. If she gets tired, Asmil's strength will weaken. He has to play with her when she wakes up. Kashmir should do everything possible to make the girl fall off her feet. Kashmir replied that he understood everything. He will play with her around the clock. Then what is the second thing? Ice cream. Muraken said to bring 1 ice cream, since someone couldn't eat it because of him. Jilly was surprised. She said Muraken was so kind. The dragon giggled contentedly. He remembered what she said about the local dessert. Jilly said that wasn't what she was talking about. Muraken managed to calm Sir Kashmir down so quickly. Because of her words, Muraken exclaimed that he didn't care about the feelings of some micro. Jin smiled, remembering that. Muraken pretended that he didn't care about strangers, but in fact he was very attentive, such as his black dragon. Muraken seemed to notice someone. From afar, 2 flying figures approached them. It was 2 earth dragons. They were Labis and Intel. Muraken said that he beat them most often. He also told Jin to put on a helmet. Jin used the Molt rune to cover his face. They moved so fast that tiny dots in the distance turned into huge dragon figures in a second. Not fast, but so hurriedly, as if they were late for class. Jin asked how much Muraken had beaten them so badly that they came only after feeling his energy. Muraken seemed proud of himself. He said that he used to beat up all the bastards who complained about his territory. The earth dragons asked what Muraken was doing here. When they got closer, Muraken reported in a high and mighty voice that he had woken up from a dream, so he needed help. The 2 dragons looked at each other awkwardly and slowed down the flapping of their wings. Should they tell him? It looks like Muraken didn't know anything. They said they didn't know what his request was, but now wasn't the best time. They told him to leave as soon as possible. They have young contractors in this area. Therefore, they did not want to create problems in the seas of Bement. Muraken grinned. How dare they order him to retreat? There is no place under this sky where he, Muraken, could hide. They shouted at him to just run away. The energy he just spread is causing chaos. Muraken didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. The earth dragons reported that Quickhandle was hanging around here somewhere to kill him. Hearing her name, Muraken froze. Jin asked what kind of relationship Muraken had with the guardian dragon of the time god Ult. Muraken awkwardly revealed that she was his ex. The dragons begged Muraken to just hide. Their contractors were still very young. If they get caught up in this, they may die. The other dragons didn't know he was awake. If he doesn't leave now, there will be rumors. While Jin was watching, he found the situation very interesting and also realized that Muraken was a great dragon in the past. However, if the other dragons were begging like now, perhaps fleeing the area was a good idea. At that moment, the 3 dragons sensed someone. Muraken told Jin to hold on tight, and from afar, causing a powerful wave of energy, a figure flew straight at them. It was Quickhandle's breath. 2 dragons started running away from this place. Several more beams of energy flew to them. Muraken danced across the sky, dodging projectiles. Jin checked the direction of the attacker while holding onto Muraken. He saw a woman who was releasing energy rays from her hands. Jin realized that this was an ultimate skill of the 8th rank or higher. How many are there? Quickhandle screamed that Muraken was a bastard that even the grave would not fix. How dare he shamelessly show himself here? She was clearly furious. Jin asked if they would fight this monster now. Yes, the dragon replied that they would fight. Jin sighed and asked how long their relationship with Quickhandle lasted. Their relationship lasted 500 years. Well, in human years, about 5 years. But it didn't matter. Muraken asked Jin to chop her Bradamante if the opportunity arose. Jin asked if she was going too far if it was over between them. As if Jin didn't know. Murakin does not communicate with those who are below him in class. Therefore, when the situation gets bad, he gathers his forces and wreaks havoc in one fell swoop. You need to do one thing to strike. Quickhandle turned into a dragon and declared that it was too late to escape. She will kill Murakin in the sea. The brilliant silver dragon that merged with the night sky finally revealed itself by flying through the clouds. Quickhandle, the one who guarded the time horizon, quickly closing the distance, Quickhandle opened her mouth and clung to Murakin's neck. Fortunately, she only touched his scales, but when their bodies intertwined, Murakin felt that he was weaker. Unlike Murakin, who had lost his strength after the battle with Temur, she was still in her prime. Quickhandle's movements screamed about her intention to kill Murakin. The sighs she made were full of murderous intent. The battle seemed one-sided. Murakin was constantly getting injured. But the black dragon didn't think of playing defense all the time. The sky was covered with dark clouds. The black clouds were the energy of Murakin's shadows in its materialized form. He flew straight into the clouds and hid in them. Murakin breathed a sigh of relief. He bought some time. It was a good thing Jin had followed him. Otherwise he would have died if the silver dragon had hit him. That was Jin's opinion. Murakin replied that he would not die. No matter how strong Quickhandle is, she won't be able to get in here. What should I do now? Since talking didn't help, Murakin decided to find a way to calm her down. But Murakin was wrong. Quickhandle tore the cocoon of shadow energy with her claws. Quickhandle chuckled. Did Murakin really think that he could be used by releasing the energy of shadows against her? Murakin seemed unable to believe his eyes. Quickhandle was so angry, seeing Murakin's sincere misunderstanding. This bastard has no idea how weak he has become. He is very mistaken if he thinks that he is the same as before. Murakin started asking Quickhandle to stop. He wanted to leave everything as it is in memory of the old days. He said that he only came because he wanted to ask for something. In memory of old times. These words angered Quickhandle even more. Thinking about the past, she realized that tearing him to pieces would not be enough. Murakin bit Quickhandle on the wing. The sounds of something breaking and clicking resounded everywhere. Due to the fact that they were enveloped in the energy of shadows, none of the dragons fell, although they stopped flapping their wings. Murakin asked her to calm down. Why did she go so far when they just broke up? Just broke up. That's exactly what she was beating him up for. She hit him hard with her dragon paw. Murakin gave a signal to Jin. Surprisingly, Quickhandle did not find a man on Murakin's back. She only noticed at that moment. Grabbing his sword, Jin darted from Murakin's back like an arrow aimed at the silver dragon's wing. The outer shell, which even Murakana is hard to bite through. It will be difficult for Jin to make a hole in it. However, with a vulnerable spot in what's left of Murakin's shadow energy, Bradamante was glowing with an aura. In the dark environment, a radiant aura illuminated everything around. A decisive blow with all his might. The sword slid into the cracks and pierced the flesh, but Jin wasn't finished yet. The release of shadow energy. Murakin told him not to use this skill until he reached the release of the 5th rank shadow energy. However, now was not the time to hold back. If this attack did not cause critical damage, then there was only one way out, to break the Orgala pendant and summon the moon. Jin didn't plan on doing that, so he at least tried to use all his cards. And above all, he had no shortage of shadow energy. Jin absorbed some of the released energy of Murakin's shadows. The release began, and just like the time he killed a member of the White Wolf tribe, time seemed to stop. The energy around him began to swirl. More and more crackling energy penetrated into Quickhandle's wound, and the tears spread across her left wing. She let out a painful cry and tried to get rid of him, but it was too late to stop Bradamante. In fact, she relaxed her vigilance. Blinded by anger, she did not notice the man on Murakin's back, and this was the result of ignoring the offer to talk peacefully. The shadow energy has completed its journey through the Quickhandle wing. Jin leaned his whole body on the hilt of the sword. There was a shrill scratching sound, and the energy of the shadows began to glow. Jin slid down the wing of the Quickhandle and, on the move, passed a sword through it, tearing the dragon's wing apart. The deeper he plunged his sword, the further the energy of the shadows went. Since he was expending energy tens of times his limit, the rate of energy consumption was inefficient. Even a knight of the 7th rank could not break through the wing of the Quickhandle, so there was nothing else to do but pour all his energy into one attack. The attack was over, and Murakin caught Jin as he was falling. Cold sweat covered the boy's body from spending so much effort. However, when he saw the massive wing falling into the ocean, he felt confident in his amazing feat. A second later, the Quickhandle plummeted. The ocean swallowed her whole, a huge splash, symbolizing her death. Jin also had to deal with shivering, which was a consequence of going beyond his limits. Well, did he become a dragon slayer? Murakin said that now they should hope that Quickhandle has calmed down a little. Jin was shocked. What was Murakin talking about? The dragon replied that an ordinary dragon would have died from such a thing, but not Quickhandle. She's completely different. The time ruler will not perish so easily. Looking at the ocean, Jin swallowed. Jin summed up that they might end up missing even before they find the missing dragon. Rewind. Quickhandle's wing and body flew up into the sky again. She was rewinding time. In fact, she wasn't defenseless during this process. The space around her was warped, and a swing of the sword through it would hardly touch anything. Goosebumps ran all over Jin's body when he saw the picture in front of him. Murakin calmed him down. Although it looks like a scam, but it consumed a lot of energy. He told Jin not to move an inch just in case. Quickhandle has transformed into her human form. Luckily for Jin and Murakin, she didn't attack them right away. Murakin said that he did not know that she had feelings to such an extent that she flew into a rage. Didn't they part on a good note? A good note. Murakin suddenly abandoned her without any explanation. Does he call this a good note? Murakin snapped back. She was angry herself when he started talking about breaking up. Frankly, he didn't cheat on her, they just didn't get along. The two dragons began to swear at each other. It was a conversation between two dragons who had lived for thousands of years. Jin had to be silent for a while. The dragons tried to figure it out, but they just repeated the same words over and over again. Their conversation never developed. Murakin is tired of this conversation. Therefore, he declared that he had not come to fight. He needed to ask one question. She first glanced at Jin and asked if he was the soldier's contactor. Murakin replied that it was not so important. One of them was in great danger at the moment. One of them, Quickhandle chuckled. He was disgusting to her. Murakin personally killed so many dragons. What can we talk about here? When Murakin heard these last words, his expression froze. It was a painful topic. Murakin told her that her brother's enemy was among them. It was a dragon he didn't know anything about. He only killed him because she hated him. Murakin took a deep breath and continued. Whatever it was, he was mistaken in deciding to turn to her. I should have asked the others. Quickhandle stopped Murakin leaving. She said that she always gets emotional when she sees him. Quickhandle apologized for what she said and told him to ask his question. Murakin reported that recently one of the guardian dragons of Asmil disappeared. Gone? Did Murakin mean Tikkun Latri? Now they have come to the main topic. Quickhandle asked if it was weird. The dragon was recently taken by Villetta. They finally found out the culprit behind Julia's dragon's disappearance. The Villetta Wind Dragon, one of the dependencies of Melzir, the Wind God, and the guardian dragon of the vice head of the Zippel family, Andre. Is the Zippel family involved? Quickhandle was sure, because they said they would teach Ladder the language of dragon magic. She offered to change the place of conversation. If they go back a little, they can avoid the traps and get into the basement. She told them to follow her. A forest on the outskirts of the capital of Bement. A trio of a man and two dragons sat at the same table. Jean introduced himself as Quickhandle. She said she knew who he was. He's a descendant of Temur, right? And he must also be the youngest son of the Rankandel family, Jean Rankandel. Murakin was discouraged. He immediately asked about how she found out about it. How could she not understand when Jin emits the same energy as Temur? They often hung out thousands of years ago, and she just assumed the age. The guardian dragon's reaction was quite sharp. Returning to the main topic, Villetta took Ladder a year ago, just when Kashmir said the dragon was missing. So she said that Villetta persuaded Ladder with tales that he would be taught the language of dragon magic. According to Murakin, it didn't sound very good. Quickhandle objected. It could very well be true. Merkin said that the current contractor Asmilla is too small to control her forces. She asked if it wasn't dangerous to have no guardian dragon. Murakin nodded. Villetta should definitely know about this. Quickhandle started tapping on the table. As expected, they definitely had an ulterior motive. For her, the life of a contract worker Asmil was not important. After all, she was supposed to be protecting Ania, not another god's contractor. However, she had just remembered that Villetta had shown some interest in Ania. She told them that when Villetta picked up Ladder, he was staying in Bement. Villetta said he wanted to introduce Ladder to her, but continued to fixate on her contractor and asked her to meet him just once for no reason. She didn't let that happen. Quickhandle sighed. She had no choice, since the identity of her contractor had already been revealed. Since there are a lot of people in the upper class of Bement who are on close terms with Zippel, it is likely that information about her handler was passed to Andre Zippel. If she had acted on the basis of her character, she would not have allowed her contractor to stay here. Contractor Quickhandle was one of the students of the Bement Academy of Magic. If Quickhandle fights Villetta for some reason, the Zippel people from the academy will do some undesirable things towards Anya. Jin intervened in their conversation. Quickhandle said that the identity of her contractor was revealed, but no one recognized Asmil's contractor, right? It's suspicious how they found out and turned to Latra. Jean deliberately didn't mention Julia's name. He didn't trust Quickhandle with such classified information. Murakin agreed with this. It was really weird. Was the magic of detecting contractors created while he was sleeping? Quickhandle replied that it was impossible. No one is able to find out about the contract until the contractor proves himself. Even if this magic exists, what good will it do them? While sipping tea, Jin explained that the Zippels would benefit from this in 2 ways. First, they have a way to minimize the dangers and eliminate contractors outside their territory. And secondly, if they kill the contractor, the Zippel family will have the opportunity to make a contract with God. In fact, this is not just a chance to sign a contract. Jin was sure that Zippel had a certain method. In his past life, the god of time, contractor Oltaha, officially appeared 10 years later. The contractor was a purebred Zippel. Jin didn't hesitate for a second. The Zippels could definitely make contracts if they killed the former carrier. That's why Julia's guardian dragon was stolen. Considering that he had not heard anything about Princess Takana in his previous life, it is easy to come to this conclusion. Quickhandle barely understood the child's words. Considering that the Zippels were a family that was already on top of the world, she didn't think they needed to take decisive action on such trifles, so they had a lot of contractors. In her opinion, the soldier's contractor behaved ridiculously suspiciously. Jin interrupted her. He said she was telling lies that she didn't even believe herself. Jin wasn't sure how the dragons were doing, but there was no limit to human greed. Even when they reach the top, they will not get satisfaction, but will desire things more than that. Zippels are also people who have ruled for thousands of years. Whatever they do, there's nothing strange about it. He was sure that the heads were up to something. Jin didn't fully understand why Quickhandle pretended she didn't know anything. Was she afraid of the Zippel family? Quickhandle couldn't even answer and was silent for a second. Murakin stood up and began to support Jin's words. He was worried that Quickhandle would attack Jin because of his words. He said there was nothing wrong with being careful. He could also confirm that greed was in the Zippel's blood. Quickhandle smiled and then laughed out loud. She said Murakin had changed. Well, she would help them, but first she would hide her contractor. Even Murakin did not expect that everything would turn out so easily. He expected that he would have to persuade her for a long time or leave with nothing. Quickhandle said she needed to see Valletta herself and find out the truth. If Jin and Murakin weren't lying to her, the Zippels must be looking for opportunities right now. She will only call from, and they will immediately arrive. Quickhandle put her hand on Jin's shoulder. On top of that, she had an obligation to Temur, one of his descendants here, awakened memories of the old days in her. His provocation, as well as his audacity, reminded her of Temur. She recalled with a smile the affairs of the distant past. When Quickhandle reported their plans, the door opened wide and a cheerful girl with glasses appeared. She was surprised to see strangers. Quickhandle introduced them. She introduced Murakin as an old friend, and Jin as his contractor. Ania's eyes widened and she ran up to Jin. Her face turned red. Quickhandle slapped her forehead, and Jin could only smile awkwardly. Ania said she dreamed of seeing Jin. Now he was standing right in front of her. She started begging him to give her an autograph. Ania looked like the most devoted fan. Quickhandle asked if Ania wanted to keep her dignity as a contractor. Ania apologized and bowed, but continued to look at Jin with stars in her eyes. She said that she had completely lost her head from meeting Master Jin. Ania introduced herself. She was from the common people, but attended the academy as a scholarship student. A commoner. It seemed to Jin that Ulta valued the pedigrees of his contractors. Does that mean she was too talented? Jin told her not to apologize. There is no need to be ashamed of the enthusiastic reception. At that moment, Quickhandle stopped her. Didn't she tell her not to leave the house without her permission? Ania replied that it was sad there, so she thought she would feel better if she saw Quickhandle. But suddenly, young Master Jin appeared in front of her. She definitely made the right choice by coming here today. Quickhandle squeezed her hand when she thought of the animals bullying Ania. If they had physically touched her, she would have killed them all. But all they did was treat Ania as if she didn't exist. Jin looked at Quickhandle. He knew how the academic nobility behaved in the presence of a commoner. Jin could imagine Ania being bullied. That's why he hasn't interacted with those bastards from the academy since his last life. Ania asked why her deeply adored young Master Jin was here. Jin approached her and told her that she was the reason he had arrived. There was a possibility that someone was hunting her because she was an Ulta contractor, so he asked if she would go with him. He promised to protect her. He told the truth straight out. It didn't take him long to realize that his wording might be misunderstood. As soon as she heard what Jin said, Ania felt like the main character of a novel. His words caused another chaos. Ania began to beat the air with her fists like a hallucination patient, and her eyes became bloodshot. She said that Ulta had finally heard her prayers. It was so loud that Murakin almost went deaf. Ania kept insanely repeating that she would go with Jin. She thanked Ulta for being able to meet Jin. Jin had never seen such a situation in his entire life. Even the great and all-powerful Veridin Zippel would not have received so much admiration from one fan. It was like a follower meeting his god. Tired of this sight, Quickhandle lightly hit Ania on the back of the head. The girl's body trembled and then fell to the ground as she lost consciousness. Jin grinned at the funny sight. Quickhandle sighed. She was afraid that Ania wouldn't want to go. Obviously, she was worried for nothing. She would follow Jin even to the underground prison of the Rankandels. What prison? Jin said his family doesn't have anything like that. Quickhandle told him not to pretend, because there was a dragon there too. When Jin wanted to ask what she was talking about, they were interrupted by Muraken's snoring. Muraken suddenly fell asleep, snoring loudly. The woman turned to Jin. She helped him because of her loyalty to Temer, as well as for Enia's safety. But the main reason is this sleeping bastard. Jin had nothing to say. He could only imagine how deep her feelings for Muraken were. But the words that followed were completely different. She continued that it was the sleeping bastard who didn't realize how weak he had become. She won't tell him that, but he won't be able to stand up to Villetta. So if they have to fight him, she will fight. Jin asked if Villetta was that strong. Yes, but it was also the fact that Muraken was incredibly weakened. Her attack at sea would have been a joke to him 1,000 years ago. Right now, Jin and Muraken needed a place to wait for Villetta's arrival. Quickhandle offered to stay with her, but Jin will have to convince the stubborn Muraken. She was sure he would make a fuss because it was her ex's house. Silver Dragon Quickhandle. Contrary to Jin's first impression of her, she turned out to be quite thoughtful. He told her to leave it to him. Quickhandle reported that Enia would wake up in 10 seconds. She asked Jin to choose his words carefully when he explained the whole situation to her. Jin was surprised. Didn't she just hit her? Even trained martial artists don't wake up so quickly. In less than 10 seconds, Enia began to come to her senses. Goosebumps ran through Jin's body. Modern physiology and medicine could not explain the phenomenon before him. It was the will of a fan. Soon Jin began to explain. Jean started with Julia and her predicament, right down to the assumptions about Willette and the Zipples. He couldn't say anything about his past life, but fortunately, Enia easily absorbed all the contents. She trusted Jin's words completely. Intrigues and adventures related to a child, a girl, dragons, and a young Master Jin. It was very romantic. Jin replied that she could look at it that way. Enia said it's better to think positively. Well, she should get ready to leave the Bement Empire with her family and go to Tikkun. She asked when they would leave. Jin replied that the sooner the better. Enia was ready to leave tomorrow. Her whole family is a 7-year-old younger brother and an old dog, Poppy. Quickhandle told her to go and start preparing for departure. Enia couldn't wait for this. After saying goodbye to Jin, she ran to get ready. Officially leaving the academy was a bad idea. The imperial family of Bement will not let the contractor Ulta go so easily. And the moment they notice her intention to leave, they will chain her at any cost, whether it's taking her family hostage or using drugs to prevent her from leaving. The Special Affairs Department of the Bement Empire will be tasked with keeping an eye on them. Until that happened, secret departure was the best choice. There will be a search and a chase, but it will start in the Magic Federation of Lutero, not in Tikkun. Although this does not mean that there is no danger. Jin and Quickhandle decided to leave without saying anything. Ending the conversation, Jin and Quickhandle looked at the front door at the same time. They could hear pairs of footsteps that were getting louder from the courtyard. One of the owners of the steps knocked on the door. The voice was asking if there was someone like that. He needed firewood. It can't be that someone has traveled all the way to their remote place for firewood. It was the Special Affairs Department of the Bement Empire or the Imperial Guard that came to check on them. Firewood. Quickhandle only thought that this person was strange because there were many trees outside. Surprisingly, Quickhandle didn't even doubt the intruders. Jin stopped her. Did she really assume that the person outside had come for firewood? Quickhandle was definitely very strong, but because of her strength, she didn't even have an ounce of caution. Jin thought for a moment. Are all dragons so careless? He said that the person outside was most likely from the Special Affairs Department of the Bement Empire. Jin activated the Rune of Molt and hid his face with a helmet. Jin assumed it was an Yu. From now on, they will most likely keep an eye on this place. They probably want to confirm the presence of outsiders that Quickhandle brought with her. Follow her. How dare they? Quickhandle was furious. Quickhandle ran to the door. Quickhandle opened the door and was greeted by a large man. He wore a huge shirt and a straw hat, and his body was well built. She grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Quickhandle was telling him to tell the truth. Was he from the Special Affairs Department of the Bement Empire? Although the man was choking, he didn't say anything. Another man's voice rang out, and surprisingly, it came from the house. He said he sent him. The man asked her to loosen her grip. If she kills him, another officer from the Special Affairs Department will come. The attacker was wearing a red mask and a tight blue suit, the uniform of members of the Special Affairs Department. Jin knew that only important leaders wore red face masks. Quickhandle let go of the man and rushed at his commander. If she needs to kill someone, it's better to start with him. Quickhandle struck. The man didn't even flinch or dodge. He received a blow, but remained motionless like a statue, as well as unharmed. The man didn't seem to show any fear in the presence of Quickhandle's rage. He asked if she had let off steam. To think that he's fine after taking a direct hit from a dragon, albeit in human form. Jin realized that this was definitely not an ordinary officer from the Special Affairs Department of Bimen. He had a red mask that only the department group leader can wear, plus he wields a curved sword. Only one person fit all these characteristics. The Emperor's right hand, the leader of the third group. The code name is one whose blade prowess is recognized even by Rankandels. Undoubtedly, he is strong, judging by the energy, at least on the 8th rank. Jin was glad that he had covered his face with the rune of Molt. Quickhandle said that he was good. It was natural for a person. Once he asked for forgiveness if he offended her. They had no other option to verify the identity of her guests. Since they confirmed them, he was leaving. Once he didn't even ask who Jin and Muraken were. And if he had, Quickhandle wouldn't have told him. But could Quickhandle let him go so easily? He had so brazenly invaded her space and even dared to apologize for it. There must be a limit to human arrogance. Once he said that Anya had just left the house. Did Quickhandle think that walking alone late at night was dangerous for her? If they fight now, Quickhandle will win. But will she be able to help Anya if something happens to her in this short period of time? Once I asked if she still wanted to continue. If not, he will leave. Once he walked past Quickhandle and went out into the doorway. The silver dragon released a monstrous aura. It pressed on Raza like several mountains. Quickhandle told him to remember that next time he would have to put the most expensive on the line. Every little thing that he defended at the cost of his life. Let him be ready to lose everything because of the offense committed today. He said goodbye once and left. Raz, who had escaped from a remote log cabin, felt relieved, despite the fact that there was an unperturbed expression on his face. His demeanor was born out of a lot of rigorous training in controlling facial expressions and suppressing emotions, necessary in order to become the commander of a unit of the Department of Special Affairs of Bimen. Quickhandle probably showed him incredible strength, but he didn't really feel fear. After all, for a special affairs officer, death was only considered a minor inconvenience when it came to completing missions. Once I told the officer who was nearby that he confirmed the appearance of the smugglers. He told him to go back and find out. And also for a while, all surveillance of the Silver Dragon would be suspended. If they provoke the Silver Dragon even more, it will only get worse. Once he takes responsibility for it. He looked at his blood and thought, they were definitely up to something. He told the officer to stop close surveillance while the targets were active. Otherwise, they will all be in danger. Although he treated death like a common cold, it was different when it came to the livelihood of other soldiers. He didn't think he needed his minions to keep an eye on Quickhandle while she was in this state. Quickhandle threw a tantrum. Apart from being harassed by the Bement imperial family, she also felt that she had been duped. She felt like an idiot for leaving Anya in this ill-fated city. She could imagine the consequences if Jin hadn't come with Muraken. Jin replied that they were able to avoid it, so they'd better make looking after Anya their top priority. Quickhandle confidently said that they were moving out tomorrow. The next morning, Jin and Quickhandle watched the ship sail away from the cliff. It was a great relief that they came across a merchant ship bound for Tikken. Jin told Quickhandle not to worry. Jin has more than paid the captain, so he will not neglect Anya. Besides, Muraken accompanies her, so there was no need to worry. Quickhandle sighed. That's why she was worried. She left to contact Violetta. They will be able to meet him as soon as Muraken returns. A week later, Muraken looked longingly at the wooden house. Jin came up behind him. Muraken said that Quickhandle is more cruel than he expected. The two of them made this house when they were together in the past. Now he understood why she had left them here. Jin asked if his cold heart was melting from this. Muraken frowned. He told Jin not to say something so ridiculous. Resurgent old feelings are something that is hard to deal with. One left without leaving a grave, and the other one became an ex. When he remembered the good old days, bitterness filled his heart. It's just memories. 1,000 years ago, there were good old days in a house that looked like this, along with Temer and Quickhandle. No matter what they did, it was fun. At that moment, a strange thing happened. Temer's face from his memories was blocked by interference. Muraken winced in pain and swore. Seeing this, Quickhandle mocked Muraken. Is he tired of a short flight? Muraken shouted to her to be silent. No matter how weak he became, he couldn't run out of breath from something like this. Quickhandle reported that a reply had come from Violetta. It will be tomorrow night. The meeting place is an uninhabited island off the southern coast of Bement. Quickhandle was standing on the island and waiting for Violetta. Muraken and Jin hid behind rocks. Jin remembered the conversation before. What was she going to do tomorrow when she met Violetta? Quickhandle said she would tell him that the reason she called him here was to find out the location of Asmil's guardian dragon, Latri. If he pretends to be innocent, she will beat him. It was refreshing for Muraken. In her place, Jin would simply avoid such a tedious situation. Anya wasn't with her, so she could do whatever she wanted. Quickhandle interrupted Muraken. She told him not to do anything. She would fight alone. She didn't need him. Muraken was extremely displeased. No matter how weak he became, he didn't need compassion from his ex. Quickhandle told Muraken to stop talking nonsense. who said she was compassionate. It was related to Anya. Besides, the other side takes the dragon's honor seriously. This means that Violetta will come alone. Did Murakan really think she would lose? She told him not to worry and just relax. To be honest, Jean doubted Violetta's honesty. If the bastards really kidnapped Latry and planned to create a contract, then they will come fully armed. He assumed that Violetta would not come alone. Nothing would have happened if Violetta had come alone, because among all the active dragons, Quickhentel was one of the strongest. However, as Jin predicted, another person came, and it was the deputy head of Zippel, Andre. He laughed and bowed aristocratically. Standing in the middle of the island, Quickhentel glared at them. It seemed to her that Violetta had said he would come alone. Quickhentel expressed strong disappointment. Violetta said that when he received her letter, Andre was with him. Violetta said he was interested in the story of contractor Olta. Andre was just as excited, so he asked her for understanding. Violetta grinned rapaciously. Quickhentel said that Violetta had committed an utter stupidity. The wind dragon snorted. Since he made a strong impression, he decided to move on to the main topic. He had something to discuss about the Oltach contractor. Quickhentel asked where Ladder was. The wind dragon burst out laughing. God, he's a fool. Of course, that's what she's been thinking about all this time. Quickhentel screamed for him to answer the question. A year ago, he took Ladder. From that moment on, the contractor Asmilla cannot find his guardian dragon. Violetta did not answer immediately. He said he didn't know if that answer would satisfy her, but Ladder was fine. Quickhentel flew into a rage. How dare he make fun of her? Violetta didn't know what kind of relationship she had with the Asmill contractor, but it was a bad idea to focus on the Zippel family issues. Quickhentel said he was crazy to kidnap a young dragon who didn't understand the ways of this world. Jin and Murakan were hiding, watching the tense scene. They had already created this area with shadow energy, so their presence was hidden. Suddenly, whirlwinds appeared, surrounding the island. It was a cyclone caused by Violetta's ability. He had an offer for Quickhentel. If she handed over the contract, then in return he would let her live. Quickhentel chuckled. What kind of nonsense is this? Violetta was just an old lizard in her eyes. Violetta flew into a rage at these words. Mana flowed through the powerful winds, and tornadoes began to approach the silver dragon. Tornadoes moved like huge snakes, while the trees were lifting off the ground. However, it wasn't enough. She didn't even dodge the attack and took the wind in full force. It wasn't that Quickhentel underestimated the attack. She truly believed that it wasn't necessary. A loud echo echoed throughout the island as the cyclones touched her silver armor. But that was all. The neighborhood was devastated, as if from a bombing. And yet she was standing in the same place, in the same position. Violetta was a little surprised, slightly widening his eyes. Quickhentel had a counteroffer. Let him return Ladder right now, and she will let him go painlessly. Perhaps he will let go. Andre expressed his admiration in a trembling voice. Quickhentel didn't like his attitude. I didn't like it a bit. The 9-ranked great magician king of the wind, Andre Zippel, since this is a substitute. Everyone understood how strong he was, but few knew about his real strength. Just because everyone who fought with him died, people could only assume the fighting power. And as for Quickhentel, she didn't know much about Andre either. Andre laughed. For the first time in a long time, he could finally give it his all. Andre's staff began to glow. The release of mana is a sign indicating the beginning of an attack. The mana of a 9th-rank mage. Jin saw her for the first time after her rebirth. Andre Zippel. The Rankandels rejected him, but he is the deputy of the powerful Zippel family. Well, Jin wanted to see what level he was at. In an instant, about 500 meters around them, blue mana colored everything around. It was an unusual sight, and since he was a contract employee of the wind god, Andrew's magic was the pure essence of the wind. Every movement of the air around the island could potentially become Andrew's weapon. The wind was invisible, although its artificial compression and movement could be seen when it tore apart space. The wind in its purest form had no shape, so Andre's wind could become an invisible sword or a shapeless spear and pierce the enemy. The space around the great magician began to transform with the flow of wind. No one knew what would come out of the curved space. Andre grinned and held out his finger to the Quickhentel. The wind flew out of Andre's finger in the form of a thorn. Quickhentel felt the danger and spread her wings. She planned to fly while dodging the attack and use her breath to counter it. But no matter how much she flapped her giant wings, there was no wind. In fact, her wings seemed heavier, as if she was floating in water. There was nothing inside the released mana that could fly without Andre's permission. And losing the ability to fly was a big loss for the dragon. Violetta and Andre flew into the sky. Violetta's breath was flying in many directions. Andre used another spell. This time it wasn't a spell inherited from Melior. It was replaced by a lightning-related Zippel spell, Thunderstorm. The blue chains crackled and gathered in Andre's palm as his feet began to lift off the ground. The fact that he was a Meleor contractor didn't mean that he was limited to wind-related spells. Even Jin freely cast spells of several attributes using shadow energy. Jin exchanged glances with Murakin, but the black dragon shook his head. Rankandel has indeed become complacent, but these empty-headed idiots are also too confident. This will ruin them. When Murakin finished speaking, Andre also finished casting the spell. Violent, electric circuits rushed to the Rankandel, hundreds of sparks and crackles of electricity sufficient to blind a person mixed with Violetta's breath. Although they were quite far away, Jin felt the blows all over his body, despite the fact that he was protecting himself with shadow energy, a force definitely worthy of being the deputy head of the Zippel family. However, despite the undeniable power, the spell did not hit the target and became useless. Rankandel activated her powers and froze Andre's spell. As the great wizard controlled the wind, being a contract of Meleor, Rankandel ruled time as one of the dragons of Ulta. Rankandel destroyed the frozen magic with one breath. That's why time management was one of the most powerful abilities. The ability to control time and even stop magic. It's been many years since Andre has seen such a sight. Strangely enough, greed flashed in his eyes. Rankandel said that today she would tear apart his dirty mouth. Andre froze, and then went berserk. She was terribly angry after just one spell. He ordered Violetta to proceed with the next attack. Violetta could not carry out this order. His body didn't move. It was the power of time control. Rankandel got off the ground and rushed at the frozen wind dragon and knocked him to the ground. When she got close enough, she tore off one of his arms. Screeching, he fell to the ground with Rankandel. Andre watched helplessly on the sidelines. He could only scream. How did this nobody dare to buzz in front of her? Rankandel was still there. Andre yelled for Rankandel to stop. It was hard for him to see the death of his old friend, but the silver dragon was adamant. Rankandel told the magician to shut up and watch. He will be the next in line. She quickly killed Violetta. Despite her threatening words, Rankandel was also very exhausted at this moment. She spent a lot of effort stopping time. If she could use her abilities endlessly, then the strongest being in the world wouldn't be Shiren Rankandel. She took care of Violette, but she used too much strength. She now needs the help of Jin and Murakin to cope with the magician. It's good that they were there. If she was alone, then she would have an unenviable end. Andre Zippel said she had gone too far. Such arrogance is allowed only by the best. He was obviously referring to himself. Andre pulled something out of his robe. In his hand was a stone emitting an ominous glow. The moment Murakin saw her, he exclaimed in disbelief. He recognized this sinister object as the Source Stone. The stone transformed into its true form. His torso broke through the spiritual energy, revealing a massive shadow on the ground. Murakin nervously watched this. According to him, it was impossible. The stone had to be destroyed. Where did old Andre get it from? Soon after, a long creature emerged from the ball, making a screeching sound that tore the eardrums. From what Murakin called the Source Stone, a huge black creature resembling a face appeared. However, his eye sockets were empty, and since part of the face was disfigured, the exact features were indistinguishable. Andre said that Rankandel was born a silver dragon of time and lived with the idea of her own superiority. But she was wrong. Humans, dragons, and even gods will eventually fall into the hands of the Zippel family. She should stop denying it and accept it as a fact. As soon as the face formed, the long neck of the black creature stretched out, and the figure moved to bite the Rankandel. The Source Stone preserves the power of all the gods. When danger came to the world, they created it as a security measure to prevent the end of the world. As a result, the gods themselves destroyed it. The Source Stone was so strong that it could erase the world instead of protecting it. So why an item that was supposed to disappear in the hands of a magician? Rankandel groaned in pain. Her right side was injured. Black and evil energy was destroying her flesh. It was the first time she had met such a thing, so she did not know how to react and defend herself. Andre laughed nastily. This was where she belonged, a place where the weak must bow to the strong. He's the hunter, and she's the prey. At that moment, the evil Murakin turned into a dragon and attacked Andre and forced him to retreat a few meters. Andre Zippel was only a little surprised to see a black dragon. There are only 2 of them left in the world. Apparently, he is the Murakin of the Rankandel family. Has he really woken up from a 1,000-year slumber? So the guy next to the dragon is his contractor. Andre recognized Jean, the youngest member of the Rankandel family, who left the house recently. Since Andre recognized him, there was no need to hide his face. Andre's eyes filled with greed. Initially, he only wanted to absorb the contractor Oltak. However, the opportunity to make 2 big catches filled him with greed. His appetite has grown noticeably. If so, to be honest, he decided to wake up his sleeping friend. The face approached the corpse and whispered a spell. Soon after, black smoke came out of the wind dragon's wound, after which it began to heal. However, this was not a normal regeneration. Instead of green skin and emerald scales, the missing flesh was filled with the same energy as the Source Stone. Andre apologized to his old friend. He shouldn't have saved energy. In less than 10 seconds, the exposed white bones were covered with newly grown flesh, skin, and scales. He slowly raised his body. There should still be lakes of blood and remnants of flesh with scales on the ground, but the wind dragon seemed untouched, except for a massive black spot on one side of the neck. Violetta thought Murakin was dead. They immediately clung to each other. Murakin told Violetta to get lost, saying that he was an ordinary lizard corpse. The wind dragon chuckled. Although Murakin lost ground, his words were still as harsh. Having finished his monologue, Violetta exhaled. The compressed wind projectiles quickly displaced the energy of the shadows as they move. His breathing was definitely stronger than before the resurrection, all because of the source stone. This artifact was too powerful. Violetta was delighted, looking at the view in front of him. The fact of defeating the old bully was refreshing. Although he became incomparably weaker than in the past, Murakin was still at the top among all the creatures in the sky at some point. Therefore, he wasn't going to lose so quickly. Resisting the breath, Murakin's body dissolved into black smoke. Then he walked up to Violetta and gathered his body back, showing himself next to his enemy. Hand-to-hand combat ensued. Every time the two massive dragons collided, the island rumbled and shook. Murakin and Violetta were going to use Dragon's Breath at the same time. The Wind Dragon declared that he would be known as the one who killed the legend. He was already confident of his victory over the Black Dragon of the Rankandel family. While these two were figuring out who was stronger, Andre flew up to the exhausted Quickhantel. Andre Zippel said that initially he wanted to be softer, but now that she saw this face, she would have to die. The old mage sensed Jin's footsteps and turned around, expecting an ambush. It would be suicide to get involved in a dragon battle. That's why Jin chose to hit Andre. This is the only place where he could be useful with his current level of strength. But he didn't even think to hit him from behind. Instead of swinging the sword, Jin opened his palm in front of Andre's face. The spell was ready in his left hand. The spell that everyone thought had disappeared. Ancient light magic that was once owned by only one person in the world. Flashbang, authored by Chenmi. As the mage staggered back, Jin drew his sword and swung it. He felt the blade cutting through the flesh on the opponent's chest. Jin recoiled to hit him again, but the Violetta Wind Dragon turned to face him. When all this happened, Violetta pushed Murakin away and quickly moved towards Jin. Violetta fell to the ground right where Jin was standing and hit his tail. The boy was able to throw his body to the side to dodge the attack, but it was impossible to dodge the subsequent attacks while avoiding the face of the source stone. He felt that he was standing right on the threshold of death. He clenched his fist, and the Orgala pendant shattered. He hasn't taken it off once in the last 6 years. Jin decided to finally call his sister. At the same time, a flash of mana flashed, and the interdimensional gate opened, and out of it she appeared. One of the greatest knights in the world, praised by everyone. A lonely white whale. His older sister is Luna Rankandel. During all this time, her younger brother has not contacted her, but now it seems that circumstances have changed. Sword axe, Krantel, a sword with a point forged in the shape of an axe blade. A weapon created to satisfy the tastes of the moon. At first glance, it could be said that it was a heavy and ineffective weapon. It was heavier than 3 or 4 people, but the moon was waving it as if it was as light as a feather. The first blow deflected Violetta's breath, splitting it into 2 parts. The second blow landed on the face caused by the source stone. Andre, who was confident and relaxed, looked anxious and tense. On the other hand, after landing, Violetta did not dare to attack again. As soon as the moon appeared, the battle scene quickly changed. She stood in front of Jin and looked around, and then smiled slightly. Deputy head of the Zippel family and the Wind Dragon. That's really enough to call my sister. She told Jin that he did a good job. She also asked if he was injured. If Jin had been killed, she would have turned the whole Zippel family upside down, causing a bloody massacre. Jin was in a sorry state. He forced a wry smile. He barely lasted. Just a little more, and he wouldn't be there. Jin thanked her for coming on time. After making sure that Jin's life was not in danger, she turned her gaze to Andre and Violetta. She asked Andre if he had swallowed his tongue. Luna wanted him to explain how he was related to her younger brother. All this time Andre and Violetta just stared at the moon, unable to find words. Their opponents are the deputy head of the Zippel family and the Wind Dragon, animated by an artifact with the power of God. It will be difficult even for the moon to cope with them. But looking into her deep eyes, Jin was sure. The fight was already won. After all, she was the definition of the strongest. If not her, then who? Murakin approached the Jin with a quickie. They needed to move away a little. He apologized to Jin. He couldn't block Violetta because that bastard controlled the wind. Anyway, he praised his sister. If she had appeared a little later, there would have been no wet spot left of the Jin. It was only thanks to her that he was alive. The wound on Andre's stomach began to heal. He said it was an unexpected turn of events. The white whale herself looked at the light. Besides, he had proof. The Rankandel family broke the Zippel family oath. Luna's brother Rankandel used magic. The Zippel family won't be able to turn a blind eye to this. Luna grinned. Anyway, he shouldn't worry so much about it. After all, he will not be able to tell the news to his family. Luna slowly pointed the sword axe at the man. Andre, in a rage, attacked with the face of the source stone. He couldn't stand how some girl dared not know her place. No one but the Rankandels looked at him with contempt. That's why he hated them so much. Luna easily cut the face with one swing of her sword. All the Zippels she met were unbearable windbags. As she expected, the deputy head was no different. In one step, the moon flew like a bullet towards Andre. The great magician instantly found himself in the zone of a massive blow of the sword axe. If she hits at least once, Andre will be immediately cut in two. Violetta took the blow. Many places of Violetta were cut. Although it wasn't a fatal injury, the wind dragon was startled by its inability to react to her attack. The moon was absurdly fast. To Violette and Andre, the moon was moving at the speed of light. It was impossible to follow her movements with the naked eye. It was the ultimate speed. They could only react to her actions by predicting the next step. She looked at Violetta and asked if he preferred to stay in his real form. It was great. Then her blade has a place to roam. Surprisingly, after hearing the man's mocking advice, Violetta turned into a man. As Luna said, one wrong move and he would be torn into dozens of pieces. The Zippel family didn't necessarily have zero information about the moon. Being the strongest after Shire, the Zippels endlessly scraped information about her. However, intelligence agents who got too close often died, and every single one of the Zippels who fought against her died. Besides, the moon was a mystery to the Zippel family. They only heard rumors about her power, and no one told them about the whole truth. They were only content with a vague conclusion that she had surpassed human limits. Violetta nodded, hearing Andre's insistent cry. Since they had been working together for a long time, they could announce their next step without words. The wind began to squeeze Violetta's palm, the shape faintly resembling a spear. And even in human form, Violetta had a black spot on her neck. The power he had received from the sphere during his resurrection was still being used. Luna was pretty relaxed. However, as soon as Violetta began to conjure the powers inherited from the Source Stone, she realized that the dragon's movements had changed. This power wasn't magic. It was similar to both the energy of dragons and the energy of demons. Luna suggested that the reason why the wind dragon was going out of his way was to buy time for Andre. Thus, she realized that Andre needed time to use the artifact. She mockingly said that the deputy head of the Zippel family and the wind dragon had to rely on such a pitiful item. Do they really think that this insignificant thing can save them? She understood why it took the Zippels so long to catch up with the Rankandel family. They had such a pathetic person as their deputy. Wind, aura, mana, and energy of the Source Stone. All four powers seeped into the spear. The spear was constantly growing and reached a point where it no longer resembled one. Without hesitation, Violetta started waving her weapon. Luna easily dodged the first attack. Then she deflects all the blows with her sword. After a few swings, Violetta couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing a good moment, the moon pushed the wind dragon away with a strong kick in the chest. The dragon breathed heavily. That was it. That was his limit. Luna asked if he had anything to show her. If not, then she will finish everything quickly. The Krantel emitted a bright radiance. The endless light of the blade shone in all directions, resembling the light emitted by the sun. His aura looked more sacred than dangerous. The third and final movement of the Rankandels, meteor shower. The blade slammed into the ground, and, in accordance with the name of the technique, the clouds dispersed when the meteors began to fall, right where the arrogant opponents of the moon were standing. Jin remembered his Uncle Zed's words. If one had to describe the family's sword technique in one word, it would be dominance. She is destructive and ruthless. Battle, conquest, enslavement. The thinking of the Rankandels is contained in the sword. That's why there was no sword technique for Rankandels. The only thing they have for killing opponents is a secret technique and a final move. Jin's eyes filled with awe as he looked up at the sky. He had heard his brothers discussing the various techniques of the family several times in his past life. After seeing how the sky opened up and the aura fell to the ground, he was able to conclude that this was the third final movement, meteor shower. But this was the first time he had actually witnessed it. And it's also the first time he's seen one of his family's secret techniques for the first time. Countless balls of energy fell like shooting stars. When each streak of light fell on the ground, Jin felt the impact with his whole body. It seemed to him that he was looking at the absolute limit of human capabilities. He concentrated on watching, not wanting to miss a single moment. He wanted to remember this scene and recreate it himself someday. Recreate the same domineering force. This final move was beautiful, and it also gave its enemies a sense of hopelessness. Handsome and strong. Every time a meteor hit the ground, the whole island cried. The earth was mutilated, the stones split, and the dirt crumbled into smaller particles. The meteors were powerful enough to turn everything they come into contact with into nothing. Among the explosions, a helpless man and a dragon looking for shelter looked pathetic. they realized that they could not survive by relying on some unfinished artifact, which eventually filled their hearts with hopelessness and suffering. Impossible, Andre muttered the word like a prayer. Violetta returned to his dragon form and jumped to protect him. Andre was in shock. It doesn't look like Luna used the power of the god she has a contract with, or a rare artifact. She only used human strength. But how is this possible? Violetta said that Andre must survive by any means, even if his body was torn into millions of pieces. As long as there was even one broken bone or piece of flesh left, Violetta could be resurrected by the power of the sphere. That's why he was never afraid of death. If he could be resurrected, then there was no reason to be afraid of death. However, the power of the moon was still terrifying. With only one technique, she made a 9th rank magician feel terror and hopelessness. Maybe even with the origin stone, it would be impossible to defeat the person in front of her. Andre squeezed the source stone. Right, as long as he has the devil's stone, he won't die. With a stone, oh god. The stone gave Andre a sense of confidence. On the other hand, the moon was overflowing with majestic might, lowering its sword axe. She didn't even look at the meteor shower that tore Violetta apart, consumed by dissatisfaction with the results. She destroyed the island and killed the great magician Zippel, as well as his dragon. And yet she was not satisfied. She wanted to suck up to her father's level. She was still a long way from her father. Shiren's meteor shower, which she had witnessed only once in the past, was much stronger. She had to do something that would absolutely dominate the battlefield. Only then could she think about comparing herself to her father. But even so, she was sure it had paid off. With that thought, she looked around. Her younger brother is clearly provoked. She wanted to send a message to her brother that he was watching an unfinished but amazing technique, that he must grow up and become much stronger to become the next patriarch of the Rankandel family. And Jin understood his sister's feelings, even if she didn't say it, or even if she said it and Jin couldn't hear it. Even though he could barely see her from afar, he understood what she wanted to tell him. She lit a fire in his heart. Compared to any other moment, he had never been so passionate about fencing. The thought of surpassing his older sister and their father to inherit the throne beckoned him. He will never forget this moment. When it seemed that everything was over, the moon felt someone else's energy. Slowly, Andre appeared, who merged with the source stone. Luna turned and looked at Andre's new form. Her pride was a little hurt. She will be annoyed if the clowning drags on in front of her younger brother. Andre gritted his teeth and made a terrifying sound, something between a scream and a growl. Jin asked about what it was. Murakan replied that he understood everything. The Zippels used contractors to create the source stone. The source stone is a weapon of the gods, although it is of low quality now. Although it is of poor quality, it is still dangerous. Andre's windless domain has long since disappeared. Murakan spread his wings and began to rise, and Jin instinctively screamed. They have to fight too. It was wrong to leave his sister in such a dangerous situation. Mirka said that Luna is able to cope with such a piece of shit as Andre. They will only hinder her. Therefore, they should retreat. Jin still felt awkward and thought it would be wrong of him to just run away. He was extremely upset and disappointed that instead of helping, he could only watch from the sidelines. This was not the life he wanted. After signing a contract with Soldrith and being reborn, he met Murakan. Jin could have started with more luck and strength than anyone, but just look at him. To think that he needs to back off without being able to respond properly. Just like back then, on the day of his death. Never. Jin never wants to experience such helplessness again. He must definitely become stronger. Murakan grinned because he was proud of Jin's striving for perfection. He knew that Jin wouldn't be scared, but it was something to be fired up after such a sight. Murakan was so proud that he wanted to bite him. Strong energy, enough to sting Murakan's back. It was undoubtedly Jin. An incredibly noticeable fighting aura from a 15-year-old teenager who had only recently reached the 5th rank. If he continues at this pace, he will become the best in the world. And until that moment, he, Murakan, will support him because he is his contractor after 1,000 years. Murakan wasn't thrilled about the escape either. However, he was looking forward to Jin's future. As soon as they left, Luna asked Andre if he thought he could kill her just because his form had changed a little. If he thought so, he was very much mistaken. Andre pointed his finger at Luna's head. A huge energy burst out of his finger, which the moon took over. Although it was a strong attack, there were no scratches on the moon. Andre laughed. Within him is the power of the 12 gods. And what does she have? She has nothing but a sword, which is too big for her. She should just admit it and give up. Even if her father were here, he wouldn't be a match for him. Needless to say, it was nonsense. Shiren Rankandel would have easily crushed someone like Andre. Luna listened to him and said that one blade was enough for a sword master. If Andre had used the magic he had trained all his life, he would have been able to see only half of her fighting technique. Andre tried to answer, but restrained himself when he saw that the Krantel was painted red. Luna said she would show him out of pity how strong a sharpened sword is against something so pathetic. Andre bowed his head in confusion. He had fought hundreds of knights, but he had never seen any of them use a red-tinged aura. It was the first time he had seen something like this, but it didn't matter. He has reached the level of a god. Thanks to the Source Stone, he grew himself a couple of extra arms. Andre stretched out several hands up and began to gather energy. He was yelling about showing her how weak she was. A crimson light engulfed the island and the sky. Andre didn't feel a bit of danger. He trusted the power of the Devil's Stone too much. The Sword of the Heart, the Red Moon. Luna waved her sword, and a massive red wave of energy quickly swept across the island. The ground soon began to rumble, and in an instant it split apart, forming cracks. A streak of red light passed through the entire island and cut Andre. The Source Stone was also cut. The space around him cracked like glass, and the dark energy of the ball was sucked into its cracks. After the battle, the island goes into the water. At the moment when the moon, which was on one knee due to exhaustion, almost reached the edge, she was being sucked in. Mirakan was descending at full speed, and Jin held out his hand to her. She barely caught it and flashed a smile. It seems that her younger brother saved her today. The island they fought on completely disappeared after the devastating onslaught of the meteor shower, the Mind Blade, and the explosion caused by the destruction of the Source Stone. This destructive force was enough to completely destroy the island. The Bement Empire found out about this and sent an investigation team. In the nearby seas, the Naval Security Service witnessed powerful explosions and warned the mainland. The sent investigation team consisted of Imperial magicians and the third group of the Special Affairs Department of Bement. They could only be shocked by the devastated scenery. It's one thing to destroy an island, but the terrible mana continued to swirl in oblivion. This was the main reason why they could not approach the remnants of the island. Once I reported this news, I reported it to the Emperor. He told him that strange matter had absorbed nearby matter, and a large amount of mana was found around this area. Although humans played a role, more importantly, it was the magical power of the Dragon of Time and Wind. The Special Affairs Department of the Bement Empire suspected that Valletta from the Zippel family was involved in the case. Before the incident, a message was received about his crossing the border. At the same time, apparently, the Wind Dragon fell on that island. Once he pulled out a green scale and showed it to the Emperor. The Emperor asked about human mana. Have they found their owners? Once he replied that it was a contractor. The Emperor sighed. Contractors with keepers and sinister energy. It was obvious that all this had something to do with the thing that Zippels create. The Emperor also asked if Andre was alive. Once he only replied that they were studying this issue. The man slammed his fist on the table. Recently, a lot of details have been removed from the reports. Haven't they determined who was staying at Quickhantel's yet? He bowed his head once. He had no excuses. The Emperor paused for a moment. Well, it can't be helped. If even once I couldn't, then who? He told Razu to make sure they didn't spill anything to the press. If they can't find Ania by the evening, they have to file a missing persons report. The Emperor also ordered more people from the Special Affairs Department to be sent to the Zippel territory to check on their condition. Although they are on friendly terms, it is better to be safe. He asked if he understood the fact of why he was so restless. Once he replied that he would meet his expectations. After that, the most important person in the Bement Empire left the room with his retinue. His name was Amir Bement. In the workshop of Buber Gaston, located in the Duchy of Kirano, Vishkal sat down, suppressing his anger. Buber was shocked that the Zippels used the Source Stone. Vishkal explained that there was a battle between the Silver and Wind Dragons on the coast of Bement, as a result of which the island disappeared. A vortex formed in its place, so he was sure that the stone had broken. Hearing this, Buber screamed, "How dare they destroy his creation?" He was telling them not to use it so casually until it was completed. He told Vishkal that he would never forgive them. Balber offered to tell them everything they thought about them. These stupid magicians don't realize the value of his work. During the whole conversation, the remnants of food from his mouth flew at Vishkal. When Buber threw a tantrum, Vishkal grimaced. The mindless bastards of Zippel ruined everything. Because of them, he has to postpone killing this pig. In any case, the head of Kinzello was furious. He wants to renegotiate the alliance with the Zippel family, so he told Bubara not to contact them anymore. On the topmost floor of the Zippel family's mage tower, a man looking into a crystal ball spoke. He said Andre was dead. It was the head of the Zippel family, Kellark Zippel. Although Andre was his younger brother, the news that the deputy had died did not particularly affect him. Unlike the perception of his appearance in the world, he had the face of a young man. Anyone who did not know what Kellark looked like in his youth would not have been able to immediately recognize him on the street. The only creature that could talk so comfortably with Kellark Zippel was the fire dragon Kadan, one of the dragons of the flame god and the guardian dragon of Kellark. He slowly fried the meat using the breath coming out of his muzzle. He didn't seem to care about Andre and Valletta's deaths either. Even the Source Stone didn't help them, it showed their uselessness. Although Quickhantel was strong, Andre and Valletta were quite capable of killing her. It was a little confusing. Kellark said that either the silver dragon's strength exceeded their expectations, or someone else intervened. It's probably one of them, maybe even both. Cadden thought about it. Who could it be? And then it dawned on him. After all, they received a report that the shadow dragon killed the grave giant in Kinsella. He assumed that the culprit of Andre and Violetta's death was Misha. If it was her, then everything was clear. She wouldn't be afraid of the Devil's Stone. Misha was the sister of Mirakan of the Rankandel family. Besides, Quickhandel is his brother's ex. Therefore, Quickhandel is not quite an outsider for Misha. Kellark thought about it, and then told the dragon that he now had a job. Cadden chuckled. Did Kellark want him to find her? It was impossible. If the black dragons want to hide, no one can find them. Kellark laughed softly, telling him not to be a child. In addition, they disgraced themselves by missing the source stone. Cadden approached and asked if he was okay, because he had lost his brother. Kellark replied that he was sad, of course, but he knew it would happen. Kellark was shocked when he found out that Andre had attended Shiren's banquet and didn't even say anything. Cadden didn't believe him. He told Kellark to have the Devil's Stone Maker make another one. Without him, they will be able to run the Rankandel family as long as Shiren is alive. The stone is also needed to control the kings of the Black Sea. Kellark replied that he was not the only one annoyed by what was happening. Cadden repeated Kellark's words. Don't be a child. If he was planning to take over the world, the stone was necessary. And, of course, a stone is needed to become a god. Jin and his companions arrived at the Kashmir mansion in Tikkun, and Gilly, who was waiting for their arrival, ran frantically to them. Jin asked her to cook them something to eat. They couldn't eat while they were flying. When she saw the moon, she froze, and then lost consciousness. Mirka helped her regain consciousness. She muttered that her young master would be kicked out of the family. Luna said that Nanny Gina had misunderstood something. It was obvious how worried his nanny was about him. Jin smiled softly as he looked at her. Jilly was too good for him. At that moment, Kashmir appeared. Jin started introducing others to him. He introduced the moon first. Luna smiled. So this is the noble Kashmir sword that she has heard a lot about. Kashmir was surprised to see her. He said he was flattered by such a high assessment. It was an honor for him to meet her. Then his gaze shifted to Quickhandel. Jin told him that it was an Asgardian dragon, the silver dragon Quickhandel. Recognizing her as a dragon, Kashmir bowed deeply, as if he was her subordinate. Kashmir just didn't want to step on the same rake again. After that, Jin said that he was sorry, as he had not informed him earlier. Kashmir nodded, saying that everything was fine, because they were in the same boat. At that moment, a disgruntled Quickhandel asked where Nia was. Kashmir was just about to tell her about it. Ladder returned 3 hours ago. Now he was with his daughter and Ania. However, there was one oddity. Ladder did not remember anything at all about his disappearance. Ladder said he didn't remember anything after Violetta's words about learning dragon language magic. Ladder was too well for them to say he was threatened by the Zippel family. Maybe he really wasn't kidnapped. Quickhandel shook her head. She personally received a confession from the bastards. Mirakan said that the Zippels were erasing evidence. They cover up everything connected with the Devil's Stone, including remembering Ladder. This is their family trait. When events go against the plans, the Zippels burn bridges. Kashmir asked about the Devil's Stone. He had never heard of him before. Jin began to explain all the events to him, from the battle with the Wind Dragon and the 9th rank magician Andre Zippel to the Devil's Stone. After that, Kashmir understood everything. Jin has been through a lot. He was very grateful to him for that. So what did the Zippels achieve? Mirakan already understood what the Zippels were trying to achieve with this. The Devil's Stone. There is only one reason why the Zippels decided to imitate the Source Stone. Someone wants to become a god. They are trying to gather all the power of the existing gods and destroy the obstacles on the way to this goal, to become the only deity controlling their world. Kashmir told them to rest. It uses all possible resources of 7 colors. If Quickhandel wishes, he will take her to Ania. Of course she wanted to, so he took her to Ania. Jilly woke up, and then when she saw the moon, she experienced a severe shock while losing consciousness again. Luna was in a good mood when she heard about Jin's achievements. After they destroyed the infamous Tessing organization, Arkan became safe. The deputy head of the Zippel family and Violetta are dead, and he did it all in just 2 months. The last battle may have been completed by the moon, but if it wasn't for him, Andre and Violetta would never have come to the island at all. No temporary flag bearer in the history of Rankandel has achieved so many achievements in such a short period of time. Jin even used magic without getting official confirmation. If he had been caught, he would have been sleeping in the grave by now. She said things like death with a bright smile. Luna praised him, saying that these were incredible achievements. Jilly had already recovered. She was stroking Mirakan. When she saw the moon, she thought it was over. Luna laughed. She apologized for scaring her. Luna said Jilly didn't have to worry. Once she can look at it through her fingers. Jilly finally managed to exhale. Now they only need to avoid the head of the family. Luna's subsequent words that the head was in the know stunned her. Because of this, poor Murakin suffered in her hands. Luna continued with the same smile. Shire knew everything, from the incident in Tessing, ending with the death of Andre. Soon he will find out about her participation. Jean told Gilly not to worry. He had an idea. Gilly breathed a sigh of relief. Jin had a plan, so she couldn't help but exhale. But the continuation of his words shocked them. He said he wanted to meet his father with his sister. He wanted to talk to his father. Luna looked at Jin incredulously. She said he was clearly out of his mind. Luna asked them not to do anything. Then their father would just close his eyes. What was he even thinking when he said that? Jin replied that he only wanted to warn that the Zippel family was in the middle of executing a plan to attack the Rankandel family. If we are talking about the Devil's Stone, then the moon can report about it. He didn't need to take that risk. Luna asked if he didn't understand what it meant for a reserve flag bearer to return to the family. Is he really going to take the standard bearer exam? Jin shook his head. Shiren will find out anyway that everything happened because of him. And since it's come to this, it's better if he talks to his father in person. He might even be able to make a deal with his father. Jilly covered her mouth with her hand. Luna laughed. She's old enough, but she's never even mentioned a deal or anything like that. Even Luna was worried that her brother might have injured his head during the battle. The moon was extremely gloomy. If Jin goes on like this, his father will kill him. Jin nonchalantly replied that he believed that when the time came, the elder sister would stop him. Luna approached Jin and looked into his eyes. They stood looking into each other's eyes for a few seconds. She could only click her tongue. In the end, Luna didn't convince Jin. Her younger brother intimidated the family. She clearly saw how hard it was for Gilly. Luna said she would go with him. Jin replied that he planned to use the first teleportation gate tomorrow. Luna nodded. It was better not to linger. Gilly wanted to thank her, but was stopped by Luna. Since their family consists of those who strive to grab another by the throat, at least she should give him warmth. Therefore, the moon will become Jin's shield. She was sure that Jin, as usual, was up to something. Jin and Luna were leisurely heading to the head of the family. Their path was blocked by Runsha. She asked why she had brought Jin. The moon had to change his mind. Runsha spoke in a low tone, but there was a cold, furious look in her eyes. Luna turned to Jin. She should treat him well. Jin somewhat sheepishly agreed. The fourth son, Vigo Rankandel, was the first to exclaim. He called them crazy. Is his youngest really that stupid to come back? The future standard bearer should not look for the Garden of Swords. Next to him were his fourth and fifth daughters, Mew and Anna. They said it was the result of their sister's condescension. Jin evades the responsibility of a backup flag bearer. They said it was too brazen on their part. Luna thought silently. Everyone has prepared well. Does the father know about this? In the residence outside the window, Marie and Diff Rankandels were watching everything. It was shocking. Did Junior give up his right to become a flag bearer? No, rather, puberty made him wonder if there is life after death. Marie was a little angry. How would Junior dare to do that? They should fight when he grows up. Diff clicked his tongue and looked at Marie. However, Marie didn't answer and instead continued to look at Jin. From the moment she gave him the phoenix heart, she had been waiting for a great battle with Jin. But now that he was standing in front of them, she could only be confused and disappointed. When the intruders stood like statues, Runsha sighed and approached them. She asked about why she brought him today. Luna replied that Jin had come by himself. Runsha was unhappy. Then her task was to stop him. What kind of frivolity? Even though Runsha was scolding her, Luna had nothing to say. After all, she was more or less right. Annoyed, Luna turned away from all the insults. Ever since she was little, Luna found it difficult to deal with Runsha, which explained why the second daughter was the only sister who could talk to her in this way. Turning away, Luna asked about their father's whereabouts. Runsha looked at her younger brother. Did he really want to meet his father? Jin nodded, startling her. Vigo roared. Was he so eager to die? He survived only by luck. Did he really get arrogant because he overtook the twins? If the moon hadn't been there, the Rankandel siblings would have torn Jin to shreds. Runsha sighed and let Jin pass. She said his father was waiting for him in his office. Jin moved, and Luna followed him. Runsha drew her sword and blocked her path. From now on, the first standard bearer must lower his sword. It was Shiren's order. He told the reserve flag bearer to return without a support group. Luna thought about it. In that case, if their father decides to kill Jin, she won't be able to become his shield. What if she refuses? The moon released its tyrannical aura. The brothers and sisters drew their swords and surrounded her. Runsha replied that this was the last chance. She must lay down her arms. If she resists, she will be killed. Luna gritted her teeth. Jin turned around and told her not to worry. As a member of the Rankandel family, no, as his father's son, he is obliged to report. Nothing bad will happen. His brothers and sisters have quieted down. To them, he was just crazy. Jean headed for the house. He expected such a reaction from their family, but he would be lying if he said he wasn't nervous. His brothers and sisters didn't know their father well. although the return of the reserve flag bearer home is contrary to the rules. But the head is not one of those who care about these rules. In any case, it was impossible to get something from Shiren without fear of danger. He couldn't shy away from the excitement. On top of that, after his regression, Jin thought it was much easier to understand his father. Usually, he couldn't even look his father in the eye. However, Jin now felt most comfortable when confronting him. If Shiren gives him a chance to explain like last time, there won't be any problems. Jin took a deep breath as he walked to the office door and knocked gently. A blade beam flew past Jin's head, which the boy did not notice. Shortly after, Shiren's booming voice rang out. The blade beam turned the office door into dust. The man said that it looked like his expectations were too high. He was sure he had given Jin 5 years. So why did he come back? The dust of the door silently flew away. Jin had heard about it. The energy of Shiren's sword completely destroys enemies. He also uses an aura sword. It must be a demonstration. Surprisingly, his father turned out to be weaker than he imagined. Since there were remnants of the object, albeit in the form of dust, it would be inaccurate to say that it completely disintegrated. However, Shiren's swordsmanship still consisted of techniques that went beyond the human. In fact, he didn't even have a sword in his hand. Instead, there were glowing embers of a disappearing aura at his fingertips, implying that he had temporarily materialized a sword. Although the destroyed door was a deadly threat, Jin felt that he had received a gift. Shiren said he would not repeat his question twice. Looking at his father, Jin smiled for some reason. His mind calmed down the moment he saw Shiren, and the things he wanted to discuss kept popping up in his head. He immediately chose what to answer. Should there be a reason for a son to visit his father? Jin won't make any apologies, even if he gets smeared. You need to be confident, but not arrogant. Jin replied that he only came because he missed him. A strange feeling came over Shiren. Did you miss me? Has he ever heard such a thing from his children? It wasn't a bad feeling. His feelings were sincere, and Jin's words left him speechless. He had 13 children, but they all called him simply father. Apart from that name, he never established a normal relationship with them. The childhood of Rankandel's offspring was the responsibility of nannies, and as soon as the children turned 1 and completed the selection ritual, they were sent to the Castle of the Storm. After reaching the age of 10 and returning to the Garden of Swords, the children had to be afraid of Shiren and Rose. This was because they learned about their parents in various classes and lectures at the Tempest Castle. In addition to being parents, they were the absolute rulers of a huge house. In fact, Shiren and Rose had the power to turn the world around. If possible, children will be taught through violence if they do not give good results. So, of course, they didn't expect any "I missed you" from their children by putting them in such an environment. All they wanted was to determine the next in line to the throne, the one who would continue the great legacy of Shiren, the greatest swordsman in the world. Shiren said it was inappropriate. Did he become soft after contact with the outside world? Jin replied that the outside world had nothing to do with it. He said he had always liked Shiren. Shiren stifled a laugh and took a deep breath, causing the air in the room to suddenly become as sharp as a knife. With every breath he took, he felt as if thorns were piercing his lungs. It was a bloodthirsty intent. It had been a long time since his heart had been overflowing with emotions. Looking back, ever since he ascended to the demigod realm, it was his youngest son who had always worried him. Jin thought he had said something wrong. Shiren said that he did not expect this from him. He told Jin to stop talking nonsense and get down to business. Jin should give the reason for his return. Depending on the answer, his fate will be decided. And it was true. Shiren had intentions of beheading Jin the moment he replied with some useless things. Then he would instantly erase Jin from his heart. Similarly, he slaughtered and killed his brothers and sisters before becoming patriarch. Jin replied that the deputy head of the Zippels who insulted him at the banquet, Andre Zippel, had died. Shiren looked at him for a long time and asked if he had killed him himself. Jin shook his head. The moon killed him, but it was he who put Andre in this position. In addition, there were a couple more details. If the father does not mind, he will report to him about what happened. It was audacious, but Shiren agreed to listen to him. Jin then explained his narrative from the days spent in Arkan and Tikkun to the events in the Bement Empire. Of course, he didn't report everything. Jin took care not to mention Aluk's suspicions of connections with Rankandel, the Rune of Malta, the Grimoire of Chenmi, and his alliance with Kashmir with its 7 colors. And the reason for his return is to tell him, Shiren Rankandel, about the changes in the Zippel family due to the death of their deputy. Is that really all? Jin shook his head and continued. Andre was not a full-fledged deputy. His older sister is certainly strong, but for the deputy head of the only family that is able to resist the Rankandels, he was too weak. Although it's just his feelings. Shiren nodded his head. Jean was right. Andre is just a figure, just like he said. You can't call him a real vice head. There's clearly someone behind Kellark. In any case, this is not something Shiren can share with Jin. Jin thanked his father for confirming his guess. He also didn't mention something else. Jean said that Andre used a strange artifact. Shiren raised an eyebrow. Andre called the artifact the Devil's Stone. After collecting the information, he discovered that it was an imitation of the Source Stone that the gods had created a long time ago. Shiren asked if Murakin had filled him in on the details. Jin was startled and stared at his father. Did he already know? Shiren replied that this was not the only thing he knew. He is also aware that Jin can use mana. Did his youngest son think he could hide this fact from him? Of course, Jin understood that his father knew something, but doubted that he knew about Murakin. Shiren burst out laughing. He wanted to laugh because he was proud of his son, and he couldn't hold back anymore after making fun of Murakin. But he only suspected about him. Jin just confirmed it himself. The Rankandel moth. To think that his son had degraded the great black dragon to a domestic cat. Jin couldn't laugh with Shiren out of embarrassment, but it looked like his father was having fun. Soon he stopped laughing. Imitation of the Source Stone. Jin got some pretty important information. Shiren decided to talk to Luna. He didn't know how far the Zippel family had come in creating the artifact, but this power was dangerous. He wondered if the kings of the Black Sea knew about it. Having ascended to the realm of the demigods, Shiren spent most of his time in the Black Sea. He had fought his kings many times, and each king was a particle of the origin stone. There's a reason they're up to something. He should visit the Black Sea. Shiren said that this time he would turn a blind eye to blatant violations of the rules. But beyond that, he asked him to say what he wanted. That was all Jin wanted. Even before he offered the deal, Shiren placed the gift in front of him. But Jin knew his father wouldn't let him leave with something for free. As soon as he announces his request, Shiren will definitely add some conditions. He had to think hard. If he asked for something too big, then the conditions would be excessively strict. But that didn't mean he had to back down. Jin asked not to allow other members of the Rankandel family to visit the independent city of Tikkun for a while, justifying its name. Tikkun was a land that was not connected to anyone, be it the Rankandels, the Zippels, or the imperial family of Bement. At the same time, all three powers sought to colonize this land. It wasn't for power or resources. Getting 7 colors, experienced people, and a trade center would be a remarkable 3-in-1 achievement. It was just a free gold coin on Earth. Tikkun wasn't worth fighting with other clans for land, but it was still wasteful to leave such an easy acquisition alone. Shiren's eyes flashed with light. So Tikkun is the place that became the main base of his youngest son. Okay, but he had one test for Jin. The hidden master of the Tikkun, the noble Kashmir sword. Jin needs to make him one of his people and bring proof. If he succeeds, Shiren will not allow any member of the Rankandel family to set foot in Tikkun without his permission. The term is 1 year. Shiren wanted to see if Jin could prove that he was capable of getting this arrogant bastard who refused the Rankandel teacher position. Doubting his ears, Jin let out a refreshing scream in his mind. After all, Kashmir was already Jin's ally. Soon Kashmir was in front of Shiren. Although he didn't show it, Shiren was a little surprised that Jin met him with a confident expression on his face. That's how it is. Shiren called Kashmir an arrogant bastard. The man in front of Kashmir is the world's strongest swordsman, Shiren Rankandel. Just looking at him made Kashmir's stomach hurt. Kashmir refused numerous offers to become an instructor of the cadets of the Rankandel elementary class. In the process of turning Tikkun into a country, becoming an instructor of the Rankandel clan obviously won't help. Moreover, it would be a distraction from his main goals. Also, Shiren was someone he didn't want to meet. However, Kashmir couldn't blame Shiren for feeling disrespected when he declined the offer several times. In addition, if Shiren tries to team up with Tikkun, Kashmir will have no way to resist him. Kashmir clenched his fist. He is a guest of young Master Jin, so he can't be afraid of Shiren. The pressure was far beyond rumors. Although Kashmir was also quite a strong knight, he knew that his fencing was child's play in the presence of Shiren. As soon as Shiren spoke, Kashmir immediately bowed deeply, as well as to the dragons. He asked me to call him Kashmir. He instinctively stuttered as he answered. He didn't even know what he was saying. Inside, he was crying, and outside, sweat was streaming down his face. He wasn't even embarrassed to have Jin by his side. It seemed that after meeting Jin, he just kept meeting scary people. Jin turned to his father. As soon as he gave the go-ahead, he continued. Jin said that his relationship with Kashmir is like a common fate. He proved his friendship with him. So it's time for Shiren to keep his promise. Kashmir doubted his ears as he listened to Jin's speech. For a moment, many possible dark outcomes flashed through Kashmir's brain. A common fate with my son. So the Tikkun belongs to the Rankandel family. It suggests something like this. A common destiny. It turns out that Tikkun and Rankandel can unite. Or this. Kashmir represented Shiren exactly like that. Of course, this was only the result of Kashmir's fear. He was very worried about the independence of Tikkun. Shiren closed his eyes. That's the sly one. He is confident in himself even after he fooled his father. In fact, Shiren was very pleased. He didn't know what Jin did to meet Kashmir, but his youngest son exceeded expectations. Jin replied that he had not deceived him. He was just lucky. Shire nodded and said that he had passed the test. From now on, no Rankandel will set foot on the land of Tikkun without his permission. If there was nothing to say to him, then he could leave. Shire wanted to talk to Kashmir in person. Jin bowed and left the office. Left alone with Shire, Kashmir cleared his throat, looking at Jin's back, which was moving further and further away. Shire's aura made him tremble. The conversation will be exhausting for him. When Jin reached the end of the stairs, his expression froze at the sight of two guys running towards him. They asked anxiously about his well-being. After Jin left the courtyard to see his father, the Tone twins were very worried about his imminent death. However, they were afraid of their other brothers and sisters, so they stayed where they were and bit their nails. Jin said he had a request for them. The Tone twins looked at him, waiting for an explanation. They were already amazed that their younger brother had returned alive after meeting his father, but his request for a request out of nowhere confused them very much. Jin replied that there was simply nothing complicated. It was about the cadets of his group. Jin wanted the twins to take care of them before he returned. Before the Tone twins could respond, Jin was gone. He had to tell Luna, who was probably very worried, that he was fine. Looking at Jin's back, the Tone twins shrugged their shoulders. Jin was behaving as usual. He was too relaxed after meeting his father. As they expected, Jin was intimidating. Outside, the brothers and sisters guarding the moon were shocked to see Jin walking out of the door unharmed. Jin told Luna that her father was waiting for her. He said he wanted to ask about that day. In fact, the others had no idea what they were talking about. He wasn't happy about that. Jin only replied that this was not the kind of information about which he could spread right and left. He was furious at his words. At that moment, Kashmir came up. He was squeezed like a lemon. He wanted to find out who this stranger was, but was stopped by Runcha. It looks like the head has finished his business. That meant they were free. Mew, though reluctantly, retreated. The patriarch's orders are absolute. Jin thanked Luna for her help. He owed her. She replied that even a simple thank you would be enough. Jin was already leaving, as he wanted to devote himself to training. After saying goodbye to Luna, she and Kashmir quickly left the Garden of Swords, and Luna went to the study. All their other brothers and sisters remained standing and doing nothing. A month later, an underground training ground in the Kashmir mansion. In the 30th sparring match between Gene Rankandel and Alika Badger, Gene Rankandel suffered his 30th defeat and asked for the 31st. In early August 1795, the Zippel press finally officially announced the death of the deputy head of the Ziplov, Andrei Zippel, and his dragon Violetta. Despite the official statement, the cause of death has not been clarified. Even the date of death was invented. In addition, the names of Quickhantel or Gina were not mentioned anywhere. However, it was big news. The Rankandels, the Bement imperial family, and other forces, including the Ice Palace, sharpened their senses and watched the situation unfold. In light of this news, a lot of rumors have spread among people. Some said that Andre and Violetta were victims of internal strife, others that they were killed in a fight by competitors. There were even rumors that they had incurred the wrath of Emperor Bement. However, the most reliable assumption was that they died in a fight with the Rankandel family. Of course, the official place of death was a remote island in the Bement Empire, and at that time, the Rankandel family's flag bearers were in the Garden of Swords. In addition, the Zippel family and the imperial family of Bement could not determine what would prove the involvement of the moon. But for the masses, the truth didn't matter. They thought that a more interesting narrative deserved to be true more than the truth itself. There were frightened predictions that a war would break out between the Zippels and the Rankandels. People began to wonder who would win, sword or magic. But the answer to this is simple. The one from whom the current strongest neutral power turns away will lose. Many thought that the Rankandels and Zippels would finally start a war. They definitely believed that Andre's killer was Rankandel. An interest in foreign policy was shown not only by commoners, but also by nobles and soldiers, especially neutral powers that were not directly related to the Rankandel family. The Bement imperial family, the Zippel family, or other major powers. Like the Ice Palace, they maintained a neutral state. But, unlike the Ice Palace, small families could not protect themselves in case of danger, which basically forced them to side with the Rankandels and Zippels. If a war broke out between swords and magic, neutral states in the gray area would turn into dust, standing between a hammer and an anvil. And surprisingly, neutral forces preferred the sword more than magic. They all huddled together to the Rankandel family, and not to the Zippel family, despite the fact that the latter is considered the strongest at the moment. The Rankandel's first-class butler, Heinz, reported that the Prince of the Shuren Kingdom, along with second-rate mercenary groups, asked for support and sent gifts. Shiren ordered the gifts to be returned and their request accepted. He also ordered the Shuren Kingdom to receive a worthy sword. They should make sure that he is the one to take the throne later. Heinz bowed. Then they will send an 8th-rank guardian knight, as long as the requester was not Shiren's direct enemy. He accepted any request. Although the neutral forces were not present in the world and in fact did not support the Rankandels at all, small families would be of some use once the Swordmaster's family overcame the Zippels and became the ruler of the world. As more and more families sought to ally with the Rankandel, more and more rumors spread among the common people that the Zippels would no longer be able to outrun the Rankandels, and the fact that all neutral forces sided with the Rankandel family made the rumor even more likely. Shiren was thinking about his son while Heinz was leaving. Of course, the rumors that the Rankandels were superior to the Zippels were just rumors. The Zippel family was going pretty well, and the truth was that the Rankandel family was only a little ahead. All this is the result of a commotion that the younger one made on one of the Bement Islands. The boy already controlled the family. What an impudent man. Shiren grinned and summoned the Khan's guardian knight. He told him that he wanted to visit the Black Sea. If Kashmir sends a letter, then Khan must deliver it to him. Khan will be personally responsible for this. After returning from the Garden of Swords, Jin, whom Shiren really wanted to hear about, devoted his time to personal training. Bradamante violently swept through the air. After he struck more than 10,000 times, his muscles seemed to explode and his bones crumbled. However, Jin felt more anxiety than pain. Even for the 10,000th time, the swing should feel like the first one. It still wasn't enough. If the moon hadn't come, he would have been dead by now. 15 years since his rebirth, Jin had reached the 5th rank in both swordsmanship and magic. But even the 5th level of shadow energy was not enough, considering what the future holds for them, which made Jin feel impatient. He felt it most of all after the battle on the island. Although he was very talented and strong for a 15-year-old, there weren't many enemies he could handle alone. He needs to get stronger. In the 5 years his father has given him, Jin needs to become strong enough to defeat all his brothers and sisters, strong enough not to need anyone's help. And the moon especially motivated him. The opponent, whom Murakan and Quickhantel could not touch with a finger, was defeated with a single swing of the sword. She looked like a goddess of war. However, even the goddess of war went to the Garden of Swords, threw down her weapons and was humiliated, just because she had to save someone weaker. Jin's enemies were like this. They first targeted his comrades so that they could not help him. Kashmir was right next to Jin when he was getting ready for another swing. He asked Jin to take a break. If he wore himself out every day, even with the gifted body of the Rankandel family, he would be left with nothing. Ania, who was following Kashmir, ran up to Jin. All his palms are wiped in blood. Kashmir approached the genie. He understood Jin's impatience. Although no one of his peers can compare with him, future enemies will also not be ordinary people. However, haste is the most dangerous poison. Sooner or later it will take its toll. Ania, meanwhile, was treating Jin's palms. Jin was ashamed, because Kashmir's words were true. He was fully aware of it, but it was difficult to fight it. Kashmir shook his head. I shouldn't have been ashamed of it. Jin tolerates such a volume of training that no one can do in a day. He would say it's amazing. There was a small puddle under the Jin, consisting of blood and sweat. Red threads swirled in the clear water. Kashmir stared at the pool of blood. He noted the incredible resilience of the genie. He had never seen anything like it in a 15-year-old boy. Kashmir suggested Jin give priority to calming exercise. He was referring to sparring with someone much stronger than himself. Jin asked Kashmir if he was talking about himself. Kashmir shook his head. Jin was still too weak for that. Although Kashmir understood, so far he had only shown Jin his weak side. He took out his sword and swung. Sword furrows formed on the floor. It was as if the earth had been struck by an invisible whip. Kashmir was called a noble sword for a reason. He told Jin that they would fight when he learned how to deflect such an attack. Instead, he offered him a training session with the strongest guardian of the Tikkun. 6 months. During this time, Jin must defeat Kashmir's wife. Swordsmanship, magic, shadow energy. He could use everything he had. Alika Badger. Along with her massive build, she had a scar on her left eye. She was also the chief of defense of Tikkun and the wife of the noble sword Kashmir. Criminals in Mamita. Her massive build made her twice as big as Kashmir. Whatever, but she's definitely not normal. But was she that strong? Jin possessed swordsmanship, magic, and shadow energy. Would it really take 6 months? He saw her every day for a month after he arrived in Tikkun. They had breakfast at the same table and joked from time to time. He really didn't feel that she was strong. Julia asked if she and Jean were going to fight. Alika corrected her daughter. They will not fight, but strengthen friendship. Julia said she didn't like fighting. Alika asked with a smile who Julia would be rooting for if she and Jean fought. Julia chose Jean without hesitation. After all, her brother Jin is weak. Her mom said she should always be on the side of the weak. Alika laughed. She asked Jin not to be offended, because her daughter could only tell the truth. Jin smiled wryly. Well, then they would train after the end of her working day and dinner. Every day for 6 months. Every day. Jin said he felt uncomfortable taking up so much of her time. Alika told him not to worry, because they would finish quickly. 2 days later, in the underground hall of the Kashmir mansion, to improve the condition of his body. He took a 2-day break from training, and since he was in the best shape for their first sparring, he planned to compare and check his subsequent results. Alika stood in front of the genie and relaxed and spoke. Before she started, she wanted to warn about something. She used to work in the Special Affairs Department of Bement. After such an experience, you stop restraining yourself. So if he loses, then there is no need to get upset. After hearing this, Jin immediately understood why he didn't feel her power. Unlike the Imperial Guard of the Bement Empire, the Bement Special Affairs Department had to operate in the shadows. Thus, the first thing they learned was how to hide their strength. He expected something like this, but the Special Affairs Department of Bement, Kashmir did not say 6 months for nothing. Jin knew that the members of Bement's Special Affairs Department were at least rank 6. However, it was only a minimum. If she was guarding the Prince of Kashmir, she would definitely be at least the 7th rank. Alika closed the distance between them. Her fist was right in front of Jin's face. The speed of her movement was not what an ordinary knight of the 5th rank could react to. She planned to end the first battle with a single blow. Even though it was just sparring, fighting like it was real was her ideology. So, Alika aimed her fist at Jin's face. However, it met the surface of the scabbard instead. Jin has already activated the Molt rune. Alika stepped back. Jin used the spell he had prepared before coming to the underground training ground. Flashbang, even for a trained knight. Closing his eyes due to a blinding flash of light was inevitable, even a moment before the victory over the enemy. Alika quickly recovered from this. Jin stood in a stance and made a stabbing blow with his sword. Alika easily dodged and threw Jin several meters into the air with a powerful blow. Alika said she was surprised. She didn't think Jin would be able to attack her twice on the first day. He didn't put much effort into the first attack. Was he trying to loosen up before sparring? It was an interesting move. She asked about the light that appeared while they were fighting. Alika had never seen such magic. Jin explained that it was an ancient spell, a veil of flashes. He covered his sword with it before starting. However, even that didn't work. It seems that such tricks will not work with her. Alika corrected his choice of words. This was not some trick, but a real carefully thought out plan. She thought about it. Jin was able to defeat much stronger opponents not just because of luck. It's about the opportunities and changes created with the help of detailed calculations and forecasts. Alika could have admired such a technique in sparring, but if it was a real fight, she could imagine the faces of his rivals. Meanwhile, Jin was also deep in thought. This was the first time he had been completely defeated after using all possible tactics. Is it because she's from the Special Affairs Department of Bement? 6 months. To defeat her, you will have to fight with her for 6 months. They agreed on one thing. It'll be fun. Kashmir was writing something down outside the door. A month later, on September 22, 1795, an unprotected area in the east of the continent, also known as the Black Sea. It's been 4 days since Guardian Knight Han left. That meant he hadn't slept a wink in the last 4 days. Along the way, Khan slaughtered more than 500 monsters. Even the weakest of the monsters of the Black Sea were incomparably stronger than the monsters in the Gnome Lands. That's because these monsters grew up breathing pure evil energy. Even for a Guardian Knight like Khan, the slightest mistake could easily lead to death. Such are the dangers of the Black Sea. Soon after, he finally found Shiren sitting in the middle of the Black Sea. Shiren, who had already noticed Han's presence, slowly opened his eyes. The knight began to greet him. The patriarch raised his hand and extended it to the Khan. Khan handed the letter over with both hands. It was a letter from Kashmir. It came 10 days ago. With a flick of his finger, Shiren tore the seal off the letter. The envelope was quite thick. Like an elder who has found old diary entries, Shiren began to read carefully. Shiren shuddered. He told him to report on Junior, but apparently he is a deeply sensitive person. Next time he will ask him to omit the pleasantries for a couple of pages. He was very annoyed, but with the patience of a knight, he turned the page. However, the next page was also filled with greetings and thanks, and on the third there was not even a single sentence about Jin. But then, on the 4th page, Shiren's face brightened a little. His eyes sparkled and he began to smile slowly. He even laughed a little. Han had been Shiren's bodyguard for the past 20 years, but this was the first time he had seen the patriarch like this. After Luna declared that she was not interested in inheriting the throne, Shiren was always cold with his children. Thus, Khan was dying of curiosity. What happened to young Master Jin that made the patriarch so happy? Shiren wondered what the younger one was doing on an isolated island, and he was being ruffled all the time by Kashmir's wife. The first sparring ended in 3 strokes. The second one is at 5, 7th at 10, the 20th at 25. On the 30th sparring, he withstood 40 blows. A letter before the 40th sparring, Khan said there were a lot of losses. In fact, if the fight is against the same person, he will gradually live longer. Did Jin's failures amuse his master? Shiren told one thing that made Khan's eyes open wide. Kashmir's wife worked in the second department for special cases of Bement. The second department was not something Jin could easily handle, hoping only for luck. Khan congratulated Cheyenne. That wasn't all. At the 40th training session, Jin withstood more than 120 blows. He has overcome his limit. If Jin had been his firstborn, Cheyenne would have given him the family without the slightest regret. What a pity that he is the youngest. Khan was startled and stared at Cheyenne. Did he really mean as a successor? Cheyenne nodded. Han was surprised, but not because of Jin's pathetic 15 years. This is the first time the patriarch has spoken about his desired successor. Cheyenne had never chosen a successor before, although he was looking forward to some of his children like Luna. This was the first time he had directly expressed his opinion. People thought of Joshua only as the first candidate to succeed after Luna's rejection of the inheritance, but Cheyenne never really chose him. The same thing happened with the other candidates for successors, Marie, Diff and Runcha. Having put his thoughts in order, Khan spoke. He stated that it was still too difficult. Although Jin's growth is amazing, he is suitable now, but this does not mean that it will be so in the future. Jin wasn't cold-blooded. On the contrary, he was good-natured, he had a gentle nature. Cheyenne said Khan was right. That was what made Jin different from Joshua. When necessary, you need to be able to renounce your family. That was the essence of the Rankandels. Satisfied with the conversation, he told Khan that he could return. Before Khan left, Cheyenne asked why the letter arrived so late. Khan apologized. He was in a hurry with all his might, but due to the excessive number of monsters, he was delayed. Cheyenne Rankandel formed an aura sword on his hands and swung it, creating a path for Khan. Next time he must come earlier. Jin fell to the ground after another sparring session. It's been 3 months since Jin tried to defeat Alika. He no longer cast spells before a fight. Today was the 93rd day. The Jin was delicious. Just think, he's already getting to push her back. Jin smiled wearily. He will have to work hard to achieve the goal. She asked if Jin wanted dessert. Latry made ice cream. Jin refused. He needs to do something. Since last week, after every fight, Jin left the training ground only after 10,000 strokes. 10,000. A realm that can be awakened when the first and last of the 10,000 strokes are the same. After training with Alika, Jin could repeat the same punch 3,000 times. Even with an exhausted body, Alika watched Jin for a while. Every time during sparring, she feels how abnormal Jin's growth is. This is probably because his aura and magic power are growing at the same time. And this process is made possible by a black aura connecting the aura and magical flows. The power gained through the contract with God was amazing. But even so, it only makes sense thanks to Jin's tenacity. Jin was a genius who works hard. At this rate, you can forget about 6 months. She had already assumed that soon Jin would be able to defeat her. She never expected what was waiting for her the next day. The next day, during the 94th sparring, Alika finally lost to Jin. When the battle reached the 70-punch mark, Jin's punch pierced her shoulder. The moment his attack succeeded, they were both very surprised. Alika moaned in pain. In fact, it was a serious enough wound to prevent Alika from continuing the battle. Jin sheathed his sword and asked about her well-being. She replied that everything was fine. It's been a while since she's been like this. Jin called Anya to heal Alika's wound. Anya, who came running, immediately began to heal the wound with her healing magic. While Anya was dealing with Alika's wound, Jin thought about his victory. It wasn't an attack that Alika couldn't dodge. It was just lucky. And it was true. Jin hasn't done his best yet. In training with Alika, he often played his last trump cards after the 100-second mark. In other words, Jin always beat Alika in the analysis phase. However, this time not because of his height, but because of the opponent's mistake, so today's victory was not so sweet. Alika had a similar opinion. She was incredibly careless. When the energy of the shadows blocked her view, she thought that Jin would move as usual, so she did not calculate her next step. Alika was dissatisfied with herself. She completely lost her grip after retirement. To think she'd lost before the end of the 6 months she'd promised Jin. Jin told her not to worry too much. They'd better call it a draw. He couldn't accept such a victory. Alika sighed. She knew Jin would say that. She was sorry. With such carelessness, she showed disrespect to Jin. Thanks to Anya's painstaking work, the wound healed in an instant. But they couldn't ignore the obvious. If it had happened 3 months ago, even if she had made a mistake or hesitated, he could not defeat her. The difference is only 3 months. As for Alika, she couldn't believe how quickly Jin was able to increase his capabilities in such a short period of time. Unshakable ambitions, fighting spirit and talent are a killer mix. According to her estimates, Jin will soon reach the 6th rank in both magic and aura. Since she was a former member of Bement's Special Affairs Department, she met many people from famous swordsman families. However, Alika was sure, among all the talented knights she had fought, Jin was on another level. Soon everyone will see it. The 1st of December, 1795. So winter has come to Tikkun. The city was covered with snow. Residents of the city together cleared the streets of snow. Jin and Muraken strolled slowly through the city. Muraken had 3 boxes in his hands. Jin asked why he bought so much fruit ice in such a cold. Muraken explained that cold dishes taste better on cold days. The most important reason for the purchase was that his strawberry pie said she wanted ice cream. Jin chuckled. Was Muraken planning to turn Gilly's stomach into ice? Jin saw Kashmir and Julia in front of him. Kashmir asked if he had a minute to talk about work. Julia was left to Muraken. Kashmir began to report everything they had learned about Vishkal Iviliano. Vishkal Iviliano. He was the interim head of Iviliano, and the only talent in the family that was losing ground due to a lack of capable people. Before beginning the explanation, Kashmir clarified whether Jin knew about Kinzelo, a crazy organization that wanted to make its leader the king of the world. In Jin's past life, they killed the king of Jin Kingdom and massacred the people, which really contributed to their fame. Jin nodded. He said that he came across them during a mission when he was a cadet. If Jin knew about them, then the conversation would be short. Kashmir wasn't sure, but it's possible that Vishkal is a member of them. He visits the Principality of Kirano once a week, and every time he looks for a workshop there with the strange name Explosion is Art. Geber Gaston was listed as the owner of the workshop. From what Kashmir has learned, he also directs Kinzelo. At the moment, there was a possibility that they had a close relationship, but since they know that Vishkal carries food there, most likely Buber occupies a higher position. In fact, Vishkal was the deputy head of Kinzelo, so he held a higher position. However, the 7 colors haven't figured it out yet. Now Jin understood why Vishkal got into their showdown with Gaston during the banquet. It used to seem to him that this was just an extremist group, but since an 8th rank knight was involved in this, then everything was not as simple as it seemed at first glance. At this time, Julia was torturing the dragon. She wanted to play with Jin. While Muraken was trying to calm her down, he hit his head on an icicle. In a rage, he hurled a fragment at Kashmir's head. After that, he blamed Julia for it. A knight of the 8th rank will not suffer from this. So Kashmir only looked at Muraken in puzzlement. Jin asked about the information about the spider-armed Alua. At first, Kashmir thought it would be easier to find a person's name. That finding information about some suspicious gangster leader from the alley was easy with the help of the 7 Colors Intelligence Network. However, even after all this time, they could not find the real name of Alua. He had more secrets than they expected. Although the elite troops of the 7 Colors worked hard, there was no trace of how Aluk became the head of the Tessing family. It seemed that someone had deliberately erased the information about him. That was all they could dig up. Jin thought that maybe he shouldn't have killed Aluk. Then maybe he could find out more information. Jin thanked Kashmir for the hard work. Kashmir said that the informants are really trying. They keep digging under Kinzelo. Kashmir will inform you if it receives additional information about Aluha, including. Jin told him that he owed him. Kashmir smiled. He said you shouldn't thank him. If Jin is really grateful to him, then let him play with Julia. Kashmir was afraid that Muraken would take it out on him, so he asked him to play with Julia faster so that she wouldn't get the great dragon. Jin replied that he would play with her without any problems, but today it would be somewhat difficult. It's time for sparring. He also asked Kashmir to be present during the sparring. Recently, he began to realize something. Kashmir gladly agreed. He was interested to see Jin's height. Kashmir's expression was filled with confidence. He was sure that Jin couldn't beat Alika yet. Alika was already at the training ground, waiting for Jin. Alika started jokingly complaining when she saw Kashmir walking next to young Rankandel. Kashmir was somewhat surprised. Can't he be here? Alika replied that she could. She just didn't want him to see her defeat. Kashmir's eyes were full of shock. Alika said that today was their last training session. It would be great if Jin remembered her as a good training partner. Jin replied that he would remember her as a great teacher and friend. Kashmir was still shocked. What is it all about? A little more than 3 months have passed, and his wife has already talked about defeat. While Kashmir lost his sense of reality, Jin and Alika took their positions. Kashmir pulled himself together and walked away from the battlefield. He didn't want to stop them. Alika clenched her fists, and Jin muttered a summoning spell. Phoenix, a summoned beast from another world, an entity that only magicians of the 6th rank and above can summon. It wasn't just his swordsmanship that had improved over the past few days of fighting. His shadow energy and magic were also greatly enhanced. Jin created an interdimensional portal, and a huge flaming bird appeared from it. The phoenix blazed with majestic blue fire. At the 6th rank, magicians get the opportunity to sign contracts with assistants, but no one knows who will fall to them by the will of fate. Since magicians can only open spatial gates to the world of fire, the choice fell on this bird. That's why magicians are desperate to be chosen by a special phoenix, and the rarest of them is the one that summons blue flames. Kashmir looked at Phoenix Jin and sighed. He knew who this phoenix was. Sweat rolled down his face as Kashmir looked at Phoenix Jin. He felt scorching waves of heat every time the mystical phoenix flapped its wings. More than 10,000 phoenixes were registered in the Society of Magicians, but only one of them was characterized by a blue flame. Had Jin signed a contract with Tess? Kashmir was too shocked by this. Jin summoned Tess, a beast that was considered the noblest phoenix. Those who managed to summon Tess became the greatest magicians of their time. Jin bared his bradamante and started talking about the beginning of the fight. A white aura surrounded her two fists, and she shot forward like a bullet, instantly closing the gap. In his current state, Jin couldn't follow Alika's movements with hand-eye coordination. He usually anticipated her movements and counterattacked. However, there was no need for that today. Tess was emitting a dark blue flame that touched everything around her, preventing Alika from getting closer. The weakest flame was no lower than the 5th rank. Even for a 7th ranked knight with a trained body, without an aura shield, she would have received a 2nd-degree burn. On top of that, Tess's flame had a special ability called pressure. Alika noticed that when she touched the flame, her body became heavier. Because of her, the amount of stamina she loses increases dramatically. She needs to finish the battle quickly. As the name implies, the pressure was exerted on the opponent affected by the Phoenix ability. Tess's flame had a weight that defied all the laws of nature. Hence, the moment it landed on the aura shield, she couldn't ignore it because the flame didn't go out as easily as a normal fire. Because the opponent's body itself has become as heavy as a stone in water. Moving, Alika dodged every attack and took a defensive position. That way, Jin would easily have the upper hand. He can support Tess for another 3 minutes. That was quite enough for the current genie. Although it was just sparring, Jin had always felt the threat of death in recent battles. Now it was Jin's turn to make Alika feel the same way. Without missing a day for the past 3 months, Alika has been training Jin to help him become stronger, and he knew what the best gift to give her. Alika jumped into the air, dodging the flames, and Jin swung his sword in her direction. Jin barely scratched her shoulder with his sword. Then, as soon as she landed and kept her balance, a sphere of mana formed in Jin's left hand. He threw the wind blade at her ankles, and as he expected, she jumped into the air again. Jin prevented her from recovering, gradually exerting pressure. Having fought Alika many times, Jin realized that her attacks are diverse. At the moment, it is almost impossible to predict her actions and react to them. However, among all the many variations, Alika had one thing in common: dominance. She needs to dominate her opponent no matter what. She's probably trying to regain the advantage now. Jin decided to take advantage of this to strike. He filled Bradamante with shadow energy and Jin swung his sword several times, leaving several crescent-shaped streaks in the air. He also used fire magic, which Alika had to dodge. Tess's flame was waiting for her from behind, and Jin was in front with a sword. It wasn't impossible to dodge both attacks, but it would allow Jin to gain an advantage and attack again. Even if she faced injury, she decided that taking over now would be the best choice. She would never have won if she had remained cornered throughout the battle. She needed to interrupt the flow set by Jin. Tess's breath of flame startled Alika. The cone-shaped blue flame seemed to engulf her. However, the flames couldn't penetrate the aura shield she had created. Tess couldn't release anything stronger because the phoenix's power depended on the summoner's mana. As planned, Alika caught Jin's blade. She protected her hand with an aura. However, it wasn't enough to cut off her fingers. To strike, she put her feet on the ground and pulled the sword towards her to pull Jin up. With a booming cry, she struck. She couldn't give it her all because of the shield she raised, but it was enough to make Jin recoil. There should have been a refreshing, clear sound of impact, but his absence made Alika look around. Her fist only hit the air. Instinctively, she looked at the sword she was holding, and there was no one at the end of the pen where the genie should have been. At the other end of the sword, a blue fire burned brightly. After Alika caught the blade, Jin abandoned his sword and changed his position. Instead, he placed a heavy flame on the hilt of the sword, deceiving his opponent. Alika was too busy breathing Tess and didn't notice it. She only noticed it after everything happened. Thus, she reacted too late. Jin appeared from behind and his hand shone green because of the wind magic. She hit her, which caused her to spit blood and fell to the ground. While managing to admit defeat, Jin deactivated the rune of Molt, and then shouted to Kashmir to summon Ania. Kashmir told Quickhantel and Murakan that Jin had defeated Alika in battle. He also talked about a phoenix with a blue flame. The two dragons froze in shock and surprise. Murakan grabbed Kashmir and asked who Jin had summoned. Kashmir pronounced Tess's name. Quickhantel fell to her knees from sudden weakness. At this time, Jin and Alika were chatting. Alika said that she overdid it and used the aura shield to win, but it had the opposite effect. To think that she was defeated by a double attack from behind. She asked when he had planned it all. After the first time, Jin asked if that didn't sound a little arrogant. Alika laughed, accepting complete defeat. Jin thanked her for everything she had done for him. She shook her head. She was having fun too. He has no idea how proud she was of him. Alika asked him to share his feelings about what it feels like to put an employee of the special department of Bement on the shoulder blades at the age of 15. Before he could answer, Quickhandel and Murakin came running. Murakin told Jin to call Tess. He called Tess without much question. Quickhandel knelt and bowed, shouting greetings. She greeted the Flame Master. Murakin looked like he had met an old teacher with whom he had a bad relationship. Everyone's stomach turned over from the fantastic sight. During the short time Murakin and Tess were talking, not a single person could hear Tess's voice. Tess was pecking at Murakin's head with incredible speed. Surprisingly, the black dragon did not resist and just backed away. The phoenix was saying something while punishing the dragon. The dragon agreed, but the phoenix didn't stop. Murakin could only ask Tess to stop. Kashmir stood rooted to the spot. He felt a refreshing feeling. He liked how Murakin was punished. Murakin shouted for Jin to cancel the call. Jin cancelled the summoning spell. The bird was struggling and throwing a tantrum when it was involuntarily pulled into an interdimensional portal. Jin wondered why the great Murakin was sucking up to the bird. Murakin began to explain. It wasn't Tess's real uniform. The real one can be seen only in the realm of fire. There was little information about the other world. All creatures from the alternate dimension have been witnessed in uncontrolled lands such as the Black Sea, which has nurtured many monsters, or through various summoned beasts such as the Phoenix. In his previous life, Jin had never heard of the Kingdom of Fire, despite his extensive knowledge of magic, extensive enough to surpass many professors. Of course, Jin didn't know about the realm of fire. Only dragons and gods called him that. They themselves came up with this name for convenience, but even the highest-ranking gods do not know the real name of this place. She was beyond the power of the gods. The flame god Shenu himself is unable to use the flame of the realm of fire. Murakin decided to finally get to the point. In the past, several gods have left the realm of fire, including dragons like Quickhandel and him. But some of the gods were getting on Tess's nerves. That day they saw his true power. Enraged, he burned 5 gods and a couple of dragons on the spot. Quickhandel shuddered at these words. She recalled the terrifying nightmare she had experienced when she visited the realm of fire with Murakin and their respective gods, Ulta and Soldrith. That day, she watched the 5 gods disappear. Jin was thoughtful. If Tess is so powerful, then how strong does one have to be to manifest that power? Murakin immediately understood what Jin was thinking. He said it was impossible. No matter how strong you are, you won't be able to summon all of his energy. No one is able to use someone else's magic from another world. This is something like a fine. That's why the gods who came to this world were powerless, and Tess himself can't use all the power here. Murakin also told what Tess wanted. The old man told him to tell him that he liked Jin very much. Murakin congratulated him. Well, even if Tess's powers weren't that overwhelming, Jin was fine with that, judging from what he saw in the textbooks. And the best part is that their fire couldn't control the tire. A full-scale war was inevitable between the Rankandels and the Zippels, and if Jin had fought Kellark, Tess's strength would have helped a lot. Regardless of the level, ordinary fire spells will never be effective against Kellark, a contract of the fire god Shinu. January 1st, 1796. The new year has come. On the first day of the new year, the family gathered together and prayed for a safe year. Fostering love with family, loved ones and friends would be wonderful. But one man, the guardian Knight Khan, raced across the Black Sea and was drenched in the blood and guts of black creatures. And this time he had a letter safely hidden in his breastplate. His New Year's mission was to deliver it. Shiren was reading Kashmir's letter. From it, he learned that Gina had chosen Tess. It was curious, but nothing more. Shiren was not interested in the phoenixes. The skill of the sword has grown greatly. It is growing stronger at an amazing rate. And that's all Kashmir has written about Jin's fencing. Shiren was disappointed. He allowed Jin to practice swordsmanship, magic, and shadow energy at the same time. But of course, as a Rankandel, he wanted his son to fence even better. He knew his son could balance it out on his own, but it got on his nerves. Shiren called Han over, as he knew Ron Aaron had a grandson, the sword master of the Bement Empire, the patriarch of the Aaron family and at one point the worst enemy of Shiren. However, the difference in their strength became apparent when Shiren reached the demigod realm. Even Ron's children were overwhelmed by Rankandel's children. In this situation, Ron's most talented child was born. Even though he was a child, he had already surpassed his generation by becoming the next patriarch. Khan said that a couple of days ago he received some information about him, just about the request of the space competition to remove the pirate participating in it. In the list of participants, Dante Aaron registered under a pseudonym. Space competition. It was organized by pirates. 10 years ago, Mary took second place and threw a tantrum. This was her first defeat. 2 months later, she took revenge. This is a secret that few family members knew about. Shiren told Han to send Jin there. Under the sight of many eyes, he will not be able to use magic and shadow energy. He would have to rely on the sword to win. The only times Jin can use his shadow energy and magic are when there are no witnesses or he can get rid of all the witnesses. Of course, he couldn't use all three of his strengths in that competition. He can enter as a mage and use only magic, or he can enter as a knight and use only fencing. Chiron wanted to stimulate Jin through Dante. Phoenix and magic were good and all that, but Chiron wanted Jin to prioritize the sword art. As a Rankandel, he needs to prove himself with a sword. Nevertheless, a 16-year-old boy spent most of his time fencing. This is enough to make Chiron's fears meaningless. After completing successive battles with Alika, he devoted all his energy to training. But he didn't feel impatient. Thanks to Alika, he learned a lot about himself. Kashmir pulled out a piece of paper and shook it in front of Jin. It was an application for participation in the space competition. As far as Jin knew, the space arena was just a playground for pirates. In fact, most of the competitors were from the 2nd to the 3rd rank. Kashmir said with a smile that Jin had been working hard lately, so he had prepared entertainment for him. According to the 7 colors, Dante from the Heron family will be there. Jin must have heard about his grandfather, the current head of the family, Ron Aaron. He was on an equal footing with Chiron before becoming the head, and Dante is his favorite grandson. Isn't Jin curious to know how strong he is? Jin thought about it and asked if he really needed to participate in this. Kashmir trembled and began to convince Jin. He said he needed to think about it properly. Dante was the next head of the Heron family. He won't get another chance to cross swords with him. Jin inclined his head and agreed. Since Kashmir insisted so much, he had no choice. Kashmir breathed a sigh of relief and said that Jin had made the right choice. Jin's suspicions were strengthened. It was clear to him now. His father wanted to talk to Kashmir face to face for a reason. Did Chiron order Kashmir to do something behind his back? Since he was being forced to fight against the grandson of the Aaron family, it meant that swordsmanship was a priority. Kashmir was bound hand and foot. He knew his father was interested in him and his progress, but he didn't think that was enough to force him to intervene. His brothers and sisters would go crazy if they found out. Kashmir told me that Jean needs to leave tomorrow. The deadlines were a bit compressed. Wishing a pleasant trip, Kashmir quickly left the training ground without looking back. The space arena was located on an island south of the Balado Empire. It was right outside the territory of Balado, so the surrounding ocean was a playground for pirates. Jin went to this island alone. If he brought someone with him, Jin would have an emotional attachment that could potentially drag him down. He knew what his father wanted to say. To cross swords with a competitor alone, using magic and shadow energy around a huge audience was madness. It was even more disgusting here than in Mamita. Space competition, simple rivalry, but no restrictions on weapons. There were no rules in the space arena, as one would expect from a fight organized by pirates, including murder. There were no other restrictions for special weapons and tools. It was a crazy competition, in which even an attempt was allowed before the fight. To think that the grandson of the head of the Heron family was going to show off in such a hole. Has their head gone mad? Well, it didn't matter. It wasn't a bad idea to get together with him in battle for once. Before his regression, before his expulsion from the family, the commoners always argued who was stronger, Dante or Veridin, because they had a lot in common. They were both above the 7th rank at an early age, were appointed as the next patriarch of their respective powerful family, and reached the 9th rank at the age of 30. Whenever they met each other, the press went crazy. Besides, they were the same age. At that time, they attracted more attention than the children of Rankandel. Big sister Luna didn't show up much, and big brother Joshua lagged behind them, not having enough talent. There was no other Rankandel in the 2nd generation who was stronger than Dante, except for Luna. Although there was no definitive proof that he was stronger than all the children of Rankandel, but the world thought so. So Jin didn't mind crossing swords with him. It will be a good experience. Not only Jin and Dante came to the arena of space, but also Veridin. He seemed to be cheerful, despite the stench that hurt his eyes. Veridin came here to have fun, so he didn't even try to hide. Jin reached the front desk. One table set up in front of the arena looked worse than a pigsty. He handed over the registration form that Kashmir filled out, which caused the registrar to open his eyes. His hair covered his big body, and tattoos crawled on his arms. The man told him to get out, because the set is already closed. It's even better if he just dies. Jin was sure that the set was open before sunset. The man said he was not in the mood to accept applications. Then the man formed a circle with his thumb and forefinger. It is clear that he wanted money. Jin knew that money problems could be solved by paying. However, he decided with additional interest to drive a little common sense into the guy. Jin sighed and clenched a few gold coins in his fists and slapped the man in the face. He threw some gold coins on the ground. The guy's expression brightened, and he nodded. Jin could only wonder at the strength of his strike, which could seriously injure a trained knight of the 4th rank. However, despite the fact that the guy took the blow, he immediately stood up and laughed at the sight of the money. He liked the Jin. The man quickly added him to the list. Jin was in the 13th group. He gave him a piece of paper and said that the guy inside would kindly accompany him. The man greeted him with love and passion at this competition. The man smiling with his gilded teeth was the host of the contest. It was the Pirate King Cosmos. The interior of the arena reflected the structure of the prison. There were long, dark corridors with separate rooms pressed against each other on both sides. However, instead of an ordinary door like the one used in an ordinary house, each room had a prison door. The only difference between this place and the prison was that the competitors could freely enter and leave the rooms. Besides, the guides, the subordinates of the Cosmos, were quite nice. The guide was reading the words on a piece of paper. It contained the fictitious surname of Jin and his band. According to his boss, Jin looked confident in himself, so he should assign someone decent to him. If he doesn't find anyone, he doesn't care, even if he feeds them to the sharks. The pirate sighed and glanced at Jin. There are a lot of young people this year. There was another little freak who beat up their captain. There was no need to ask who it was. There was not a single teenager on this crazy island, except for Dante Aaron. It's a pity that these two are not in the same group. It would be fun to watch them fight. Who knows, maybe they will meet in the final. The pirate could only wish good luck. By the way, you will need a lot of it. Having reached the 13th group, the pirate began to leave. They'll see each other again if Jin survives. Jin asked about his room. The pirate just snapped, saying he had no idea. The guide definitely thought that Jin would die immediately. However, he spoke in a mocking tone, so Jin just walked past him and started choosing a room. Looking around each room, walking slowly, he noticed that there was considerable variety inside the rooms. In one room, someone was sitting in a corner and muttering prayers. In another, someone was examining unidentified objects. Some competitors have already formed gangs and joked with each other. In some aspects, this place seemed more barbaric than Mammoth. Jin shrugged and chose a room. He wandered the corridors for 10 minutes, but there was not a single room that was cleaner or better. They were all old and dirty. In fact, there are not enough seats for all participants. It seems that 2 or 3 people in a room is the norm. It's quite obvious that they deliberately wanted to cram a few people in here. The space arena was a brawl in which killing was allowed even before the fight. The contest was more like a survival game than a normal brawl. Consequently, they purposefully pushed competitors into cramped rooms. They wanted them to fight in a confined space. And when someone participated in the competition, it was impossible to leave it. Space's henchmen guarded the entrance, as well as the rest of the competitors did not let them escape so easily. If someone had made an unsuccessful attempt to escape, the other participants would have turned the fugitive into dead meat before the guards had time to get to him. This was the very reason why Cosmos thought Jin would become shark food if he didn't survive, and the reason why the guide said Jin would die anyway. It was hard to expect a novice to survive in such a wild environment. They thought Jin's chances of death were high, even if he was a talented 4th-ranked knight. To survive in such a place, observation and experience were more important than pure combat power, and a pirate definitely has more of them than a young guy. In the middle of a long corridor, Jin pulled open the cell door. There was an annoying sound of metal grinding on concrete, and the 3 participants inside the cell stared at Jin. The 3 guys were about 30 years old. After seeing their attitude, Jin came to the conclusion that they were just some inappropriate gangsters. Jin put down his sword and took off his coat. He'll count to 3. Those who do not leave during this time, they can only blame themselves for this. He had no intention of sharing a room, not even in the slightest. If he leaves these people by his side, they can stab him in the back at any moment. The hooligans doubted their ears and blinked. 1, 2, 3. Soon, the first one flew out with a bang. Several blows sounded. The bandits didn't even have time to react to the quick attacks. Following the painful screams, loud applause came from the next room. Others started coming out of their cells to take a look at Jin. Clean room found. But the real battle has just begun. He was sure that others would attack him, so he drew his sword and left the cell. And his prediction was accurate. It didn't take long before a lot of people appeared in front of him, eager to take his apartment. Jin asked them if anyone would like to share this apartment with him. Everyone grinned and rushed at him. The massacre began. Bradamante cut through the flesh of these bandits like a red-hot knife through butter. Severed limbs flew into the air and the floor was flooded with blood. The air was filled with the sickening smell of blood and madness, even with the lawlessness reigning. This place is nothing compared to Mammoth. Looking at their red eyes, eager to kill him, Jin realized that he would do without sleep today. Soon Jin was reading books in a relaxed atmosphere. The pirate who brought him here came to him. He said it was a little annoying. The pirate asked if Jin planned to kill everyone before the start of the competition. The road to Jin was littered with fresh corpses. Jin closed the book and grinned. He would call it an aperitif before the main course. The pirate couldn't help but laugh. He initially thought that Jin was just an arrogant kid, but his captain was right about him. For a reason, he ordered Jin to be taken to decent guys. He informed Jin that the 1st and 2nd groups would start soon. Most likely, Jin will fight with one of them so he can take a look at their fights. The pirate decided to escort Jin there. As they approached the arena, the screams and screams became clearer. After taking the seats for the audience, Jin silently stood up to see the huge crowd, not counting the participants. There were at least 1,000 spectators. For a moment, Jin was worried that someone might recognize his face, but he didn't think that someone who went to a banquet in Rankandel would come to such a dirty place. However, if he had known there would be so many people, he would have focused a little more on his disguise. He could hear the voices of the audience. They looked like nobles from the upper class of the Balado Empire who visited the arena every year. They said they had heard that a backup standard bearer from the Rankandel family had appeared here. Jin would never have thought to hear such rumors. He stealthily sat down next to the two nobles and overheard their conversation. One of them asked the other why one of the Rankandels would be here. The second replied that he had heard about it from Cosmo when they were drinking together with him. A strong guy got mixed up among the participants. If the rumors are true, he's from the Rankandel family. It could be Daytona, Hayton, or Jean Rankandel. If the latter, then it will fly away. They wanted to see him, because Jin had reached the 5th rank at such a young age. Jin was interested, so he listened attentively to the nobles discussing this new rumor. The fame and power of his family is really well known. His name has been mentioned many times in press releases, but they even know the names of the Tone Twins. The Tone Twins were going to be temporary flag bearers. Before Jin's regression, they began their adventures around 1796 or 1797. Thinking about the atmosphere and mood of the Cosmos Arena, as well as the fact that the twins were considered vile homicidal maniacs in his past life, Jin concluded that they could well have joined the arena. Of course, in this life, the Tone Twins have been mistreated by Jin since their youth. Compared to his previous life, they have become much softer. If the twins are here, then this is great for his case. He can bring them to his room and use them as guards. Getting them to do all the dirty work would be nice. After that, the nobles argued over which of the Rankandels took part in the competition. Not only that, but other nobles also started whispering about the same topic. Fireworks flew into the air, painting the sky with bright colors. When the explosions followed, the air around warmed up. Then a man appeared and walked to the middle of the arena, the Pirate King Cosmos. As soon as he appeared, the audience went crazy. Cosmos seemed to be very popular with the public. There were nobles around him who were shouting and applauding with excitement. It was strange to see how those people who looked down on ordinary people suddenly welcomed violators of the law. Such a crowd came to fill his pockets. What a waste. However, enough of the chatter, they started the battle. Pirates on the edge of the arena blew horns. The steel doors on both sides of the arena rose, and the rivals appeared. There were 14 people in each group, and since there were at least 13 groups, 182 applicants participated in this dirty competition. No other fighting competition has involved so many people. Cosmos represented the main characters of the first match. The first one to appear was the one who was in the quarterfinals, the cutie from the Sharks, Mentes. While the nobles were talking in amazement, Mentes entered the arena first. With a shriveled physique, he assumed an awkward pose with strange swords in his hands, a typical image of a pirate. His opponent was a newcomer who participated for the first time. What does the cute little face of the swordsman boy hide? The boy was introduced by Paul Mick. Paul Mick came out of the waiting room and the audience started chatting. Everyone was surprised to see the child. They had heard that there were a lot of young guys this time, but Mick's gender was too small. This Paul Mick didn't look like he was no more than 15. Jin was also surprised. The boy looked about 13 or 14. He would jump into the arena without hesitation. He couldn't just let the child die there. But Jin remembered the pirates' words that their captain had been hit by a boy. The next series of events was the most unexpected. After notifying about the start of the fight, Cosmos left the ring, and Mentes licked the blade of the sword, showing his tongue with many scars. A swing of the sword. It happened in an instant. Mentes' neck was cut. The audience could not determine exactly when the pirate's head fell off. It was obvious. The movement was so fast that Jin, who was about to reach the 6th rank, barely noticed what had happened. Even Mentes himself did not have time to realize that he was left without a head. It was a slash in the form of a crescent. He instantly closed the distance, and when he was only 5 steps away from the pirate, he chopped off his head with a sickle-shaped swing. There was no doubt that it was Dante. There was no one among the applicants, except Dante Heron, who could do it. The audience fell silent. Those who spoke a minute ago could not find the words now, and Cosmos slapped his forehead with displeasure. Shark show-offs were annoying. Cosmos announced the winner, but the audience was silent. While everyone was in shock, the guy in the VIP seats on top of Jin stood up and started applauding. He said he would put all the money on it, and surprisingly, it was someone Jin knew well. Jin's eyes widened and he had to confirm that the face he saw was Veridon's. The audience belatedly began to applaud. The people next to Veridon seemed to be infected by his enthusiasm. They said they would also bet on Paul Mick. Veridin said that Paul is the future. Even if they have to roll out all the savings, you need to bet immediately. Jin looked at Veridin, who was still clapping. Veridin probably came because he was on a mission. He also got on his nerves, as did Dante. He will definitely notice it, and if he finds out, he'll be a pain in the ass. His alarming predictions could not be wrong. And, unfortunately, it was at this moment that Veridin noticed Jin, who was staring at him intently. Veridin was waving madly at Jin. Of course, Jin ignored him and looked at Dante. Oddly enough, Dante turned his head and looked at Veridin. He had only seen Veridin once at the Zippel family banquet, and he had already greeted him so openly in an unfamiliar place. So he waved too, expressing joy. It gave Jin a headache. Cosmos wanted to hear what Paul Meek had to say. Dante was happy that he got rid of one of the villains of the world. He also expressed the hope that in the next life Mentes will not be a pirate. Although his appearance was similar to that of a child, his voice was comparatively lower, and at the same time he scolded the pirates in the Pirate Bay. The Cosmos laughed. He said that the boy had upset the people present here with his words. The Cosmos told him to try his best. The pirates will be happy to talk to him on the fists. Dante silently headed to the waiting room, and the Cosmos continued the battles. Jin watched the rest of the sparring sessions. But apart from Paul Mick, there was no one who would attract his attention. He was sure that this boy was Dante Heron. He looked young, but his swordsmanship spoke for itself, so there could be no mistake. But most importantly, will he be able to defeat Dante? Jin quickly came to the conclusion that the fight with Dante could be won. Using magic and shadow energy, you can win without any problems. Not so long ago, he defeated the former agent of the Special Affairs Department, Bement, even though she was retired. It's true that Dante was very talented, but Jin could definitely beat him. But if they fight only with swords, there is no certainty. His crescent-shaped strikes, agility, explosive power, and accuracy are extraordinary. Dante Heron definitely practiced more proficient swordsmanship. It was inevitable because he was 3 years older, so Jin had to analyze. Perhaps he can win if he collects all the methods of victory until he meets Dante in the arena. He was told that several groups would be held tomorrow. This meant that his turn would come in 4 days. Until then, he must survive these nights. Dante's tired face appeared. He hadn't slept for at least a couple of days and was severely exhausted. A couple of days before the space competition, Veridin was playing with the pendant in his hands. The elder shook his head disapprovingly, saying that it was not a toy. Even the deputy head resorts to it only when very necessary, so he should be careful. Veridin laughed. He felt more confident with him. He also asked why he was called. The elder had a headache. He couldn't figure out who Veridin had taken after at all. On the southern island of the Bellado Empire, a martial arts event is held year after year. Perhaps Veridin knew about it. Hearing this, Veridin shuddered and began to behave extremely suspiciously. The elder wanted to hit his bad head with his fist, and he was wondering where Veridin disappeared to every time. The old man sighed and said that Dante Heron, the temporary head of the Heron family, was participating there this time. The elder ordered him to go there to see how strong his future opponent was. He should take this chance to see everything in person. That's why he was here. Now he had some pocket money. But why the hell haven't we played a single normal match in the last 2 days? Veridin was dissatisfied and disappointed. It was interesting to watch Dante's skill, but all the others were deadheads not worth his attention. This year has been just awful. Where are all the cool guys? Looking at the non-tournament grid, he saw the name Jean Grey. He immediately realized that this was Jin's pseudonym. This meant that Jin was not just a spectator here. Veridin could not restrain his beating heart. He was delighted. Jean and Dante. Veridin considered them the only 2 rivals in the world and did not expect to meet them both here. Unfortunately, Jin didn't give a damn about Veridin. Jin flopped down wearily on the ground. There are 147 participants left. 35 died. 5 died in double matches, the rest outside the arena. The members from the other group would be attacking soon, so he couldn't weaken the defense by an inch. If he falls asleep, anything can happen. During his cadet years, Jin trained without proper sleep, but this is the first time he stays on his feet for 4 days. He heard footsteps in the hallway, which were getting louder. It can't be that it was just a passerby. It had to be the movement of a man who intended to kill him. They could have been looking for someone else, but Jin silently took Bradamante. The footsteps got closer, louder. They stopped in front of the room next to Jin's. One more step and it will be Jin's room. This man didn't even hide his presence. It looks like he was overconfident or went crazy because of lack of sleep. Jin stood up and stood in a crouch, gripping the sword tightly. As soon as the visitor entered his cell, Jin planned to strike immediately. A strong metallic stench emanated from the man outside. The smell of blood. And then Jin heard an unexpected voice. A hoarse voice asked him to stop. It was Dante. He asked him for a bed for the night. If Jin helps him, then Dante will repay the same. Dante has been watching Jin since yesterday. And I have to say that he is a real master of the sword. A dull sound. Dante fell asleep without finishing. Jin could only be surprised. It won't be a problem to slit Dante's throat while he's vulnerable. He fell fast asleep on the spot. Didn't the Aaron family train him to function without sleep? There was a strong smell of blood coming from Dante. It looks like they tried to suppress him with quantity. However, before his frustration receded, Jin heard the footsteps of people trying to sneak in and hide them. It was a gang that was waiting for Dante to be helpless. Leaving the next head of the Aaron family in debt to him would be quite nice. Jin covered Bradamante with an aura and prepared to fight the aggressors. Seeing that they did not hide their presence well, Jin realized that they were not trained killers. In addition, their breathing was hoarse, which showed their nervousness. They would still be able to handle Dante, who was exhausted, but they weren't enough to take care of Gina. Jin deliberately stomped to the door of the cell, and the killers stopped in place. Before his enemies could exchange signals, he cut down the nearest opponent. Didn't they hear the warning? Everyone who enters this room leaves it without a head. One of the killers asked him to wait. They knew him because Jin had killed his entire group. He asked him to calm down. They weren't here to attack him, but the killer was just stalling and giving the command to another. While Jin was listening to the other assassins, something shining at the edge of the corridor caught his attention. He heard the tension of the bowstring and soon realized that the flicker came from the light hitting the arrowhead. Shot. The crossbow bolt smeared with poison was safely caught by the genie. Since they've come this far, they can only leave over his dead body. Dante woke up 17 hours later, around lunchtime. And as soon as he woke up, Jin told about everything that had happened since he lost consciousness. He went on to talk about how much he had done to keep Dante alive, and how he had caught one guy and found out about One-Eyed Joe, as well as a gang of pirate gangsters. They planned to catch the guy from the Rankandels and get a ransom. Dante participated in this competition and in Jin's past life, and then he became a hostage of these guys. The Aaron family was able to get Dante back after giving them an unimaginable amount of money and solemnly vowed that they would not take revenge. Like the butterfly effect, the Aaron family faced internal problems and many consequences. Jin didn't know much about the backstory of this family's internal failures due to secrecy, but he knew that he had just changed history by simply saving Dante. Even if they were a famous family, if an important figure was caught, one would only agree to the demands of the kidnappers, especially when their next patriarch was a hostage. Of course, if it had been the Rankandel family, they would have simply ordered the pirates to kill the hostage and proceeded to massacre the kidnappers, their families, acquaintances, and even unrelated persons. Everyone will die. This was Rankandel's method. It is strikingly different from other large families. Hearing that Jin had saved him, Dante thanked him with a smile. When he heard that he was mistaken for one of the Rankandels, he laughed. Had he been mistaken for one of those impudent Rankandels? He let out a deep laugh and shook his head. Seeing Jin's soulless eyes, Dante continued, "Since Jin is his savior, he should explain. As they suspected, he is a nobleman, even though he's not from Rankandel. It was a little awkward for him to tell Jin the name of his family. Therefore, he said that he was a nobleman from Bement." Dante thought that Jin's attitude would change if he revealed that he was from Heron, traveling under a pseudonym. Whenever his status was revealed, he often saw his friends suddenly acting like servants. Noticing Dante's intention, Jin cleared his throat and stifled a laugh. He just nodded. Dante thanked him for his understanding. He owed him. Dante didn't know how to repay Jin. An eye for an eye, a life for a life. If Jin's life is in danger, he will put his life on the line to protect him. Dante swore on his honor. Having said that, Dante's eyes filled with sincere gratitude. Jin felt good inside. He knew, of course, that he had successfully instilled in Dante a sense of duty. Jin fell asleep instantly, just like Dante in the morning. But before that he said to wake him up before the match of the 13th group. And looking at Jin, who was fast asleep, Dante thought to himself, Jin was cold on the outside, but he was fighting for him, a man he had never seen before. Looks like he's found a good friend. Jin's battles the next day were not much different from Dante's. His opponents were presented with pretentious names like the Demon King Heli or something. But it only took 7 seconds to kill them. The audience fell silent again, and Veridin cheered the crowd. Some assumed that Jin was stronger than Paul. Others believed that Jin was no match for the reserve standard bearer of the Rankandel family. Hearing such words, Paul couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. He certainly wasn't a Rankandel. Jin showed off his amazing sword skills, but the nobles in the hall were already convinced that Dante was the temporary standard bearer of the Rankandel family. For them, it was no longer just a rumor. More and more money was accumulating in Dante's pool, and few people put their money on Jin. Thanks to Jin, the other participants naturally became irrelevant. The finalists, winners and veterans of last year, who were supposed to lead the event, were not impressed. Most of the participants were murder lovers, but no matter how much they liked to kill, most of all they wanted money. Getting a part of the betting pool was much more important than the grand prize of 1,000 gold coins for the participant. They were unhappy about it. Because of these boys, it was really boring. The bearded veteran offered to unite and kill them. Although these guys are strong, but they were all young and inexperienced. The prize pool for the winner will increase as more bets are accumulated per person. Someone else's luck could only be a pain for veterans. At that moment, the man of the Pirate King of Space appeared. He told him to stop talking nonsense. They can't handle them. Jean Grey's nickname is the God of Death, and he didn't get it for his pretty eyes. Besides, Jean and Dante shared the same room. He warned them because they are quite popular. It will be a pity if they die before the match starts. After that, he left. Lindy hated to admit it, but he was right. They decided to retreat. This will be the best solution. Fortunately, they won't encounter any young monsters. The veterans were not eager to die in this hole. Since the mood of the veterans was so sour, the rest of the participants had to unite among themselves. Until the end of the qualifiers, they decided to kill each other less. This way they will be able to return next year and earn money. The veterans' plan was to manipulate the victory. They planned to have battles without killing each other. Thus, they could guarantee easy money by distributing bets. The guide passed all this information to the Cosmos. The Cosmos was somewhat displeased. Did they decide to do something like this behind his back? The guide asked what he would do. The competition will be boring. Viewers will also notice this. The Cosmos said it was for the best. To hell with the program. Once Jean Grey and Paul Meek reach the finals, then the cheaters and the rest will become victims of the kid. The Cosmos has ordered an increase in the dividend rate for everyone except this couple of children. They should raise the bet to a value at which the audience will not be able to sleep, eat, and shit if they do not bet. It will be a lightning transition from the winner's match to the final. Whatever the final result, they will earn a lot of money anyway. The remaining rounds of the preliminary games passed quickly. Despite the fact that everything was staged, the battles were not as bloody and brutal as last year. The veterans just broke a few bones and effortlessly ended their fights, causing angry shouts from the audience. It could be said that the fights were staged. However, despite this, no one left their seats. They knew that after all the boring battles, they would be able to see a duel between Jin and Dante. And every time Jean or Dante encountered people objectionable to space in the arena, the crowd seemed to go crazy. Although none of the audience's favorites did anything special, the crowd went crazy. These two didn't even need to brutally kill their opponents. The two guys ended their battles with 1 or 2 swings of the sword. All their fights from the preliminary rounds to the semifinals easily ended like this. And finally, the finale. The whole audience was waiting for their appearance. Veridin went out to look, not closing his eyes because of anxiety. One became a shocking supernova from the first match, and the other was the God of Death, who reeked of blood even before the start. Veridin asked his bodyguards who they would bet on. They called the name Paul Meek without hesitation. It seemed to them that Paul Meek's sword skill was more refined. The bodyguards asked who he was betting on. Veridin grinned. He put 100,000 zlotys on Jean Grey. The bodyguards doubted that the pirates would be able to pay 300,000 gold if Jean Grey won. Veridin was sure that the Cosmos had money. The Pirate King has a couple of islands, so if he sells them, he can pay him back. The Cosmos came to the middle of the arena. Cosmos bowed to the audience. Many were delighted to see how he introduced himself. There were also those who scolded him. The audience threw mugs and vegetables at him. The Cosmos felt only disappointment. Usually the audience showered him with applause and flowers for hosting such a great show. He could only curse them in his mind. Cosmos has decided to double the entry fee next year. Cosmos stood up, hiding his displeasure. He suggested skipping the empty chatter and calling the heroes of today. Dante was more popular than Jean. It was inevitable, as the audience thought he was a Rankandel. When Dante entered the arena, many shouted to him with all their hearts. When Jin entered the stadium, the applause became much quieter. Instead, there were many who folded their hands on their foreheads, praying for the desired outcome. They were gamblers who saw a threefold gambling multiplier and used all their savings for betting. Despite their incorrect prediction that Dante would be the temporary standard bearer of the Rankandels, people definitely thought that he would defeat Jin. So far, Dante has handled his sword and crescent freely and skillfully, but Jin has not. So, the people who were betting on Jin were praying for his victory. Veridin stood up and shouted in support of Jin with bloodshot eyes. The other spectators who had placed a bet on Jin also started shouting. Of course, Jin didn't even look at them and walked over to his side of the arena. He felt considerable pressure, not because of the players who had put the unbelievable on the line, but because he wasn't sure if he could actually beat Dante. Jean Rankandel and Dante Heron. The two looked at each other with a calm expression. Unlike their other fights, they deliberately left 30 paces apart. One more step will be within the reach of the attack. They stood motionless, but the crushing tension suffocated both rivals. Jin couldn't make the first move as usual. Even without clashing swords, he knew that Dante's swordsmanship was better than his. He had felt it ever since he first saw Dante's fights. As for Dante, he couldn't hit first either, but not because he thought Jin was better. Jin's eyes darted left and right. Then when he focused his attention back on the middle, Dante was gone, and the familiar sound of a sword flying through the air reached his ear. Surprised, Jin picked up Bradamante, and Dante flew to Jin with a smile. The blow that passed through the hilt of the sword was incredible, as if there was an explosion inside the sword. There was an energy as sharp as split obsidian in the heavy blow. If Jin didn't have at least a little less strength in his hips and lower body, his stance would immediately collapse. He breathed a sigh of relief. Then he calmly took a step to the left to step away from Dante. Dante smiled. He knew this trick wouldn't work on Gina. As Jin prepared to swing his sword, Dante's blade began to be covered with a more powerful aura. Jin also didn't stand still and covered the sword with his aura. Every time their blades met, the sounds of an explosion echoed. Instead of two sharp guns, it sounded like two pieces of steel hitting each other. Jin was certain of something after parrying the blow a few times. Dante's first attack was the fastest, and now he retained stamina and increases speed only when necessary. Jin decided to keep up Dante's pace. Compliments were distributed in all halls. They all expected a big battle between them, but they didn't think it would be so interesting. Veridin ignored his sweaty hands and clutched his clothes. At first, Jin looked like he was cornered, but with every second he was catching up with Dante's pace. When they had about 20 hits in a fight, they looked equal. Jin's plan to destroy Dante was simple. He will take advantage of the only trait in which he has an advantage over Dante: endurance. Dante's body didn't complement his skill, and that was a weakness. He was 19, but he looked 13 or 14. He had a very petite build, which made it hard to believe that he was 19. He could increase his power and strength by using aura, but the change in stamina was beyond his capabilities. If his stamina was as great as his swordsmanship, then he would never have asked Jin for help. On the other hand, Jin was blessed with the famous physique of the Rankandel clan. His physical strength, stamina, recovery speed, and agility surpassed most, if not all people. He could have survived the nights in the arena without Dante. But this could not be said about Dante. Dante's stamina was incomparable to Jin's, although he always tried to overcome his weakness by bleeding and sweating. He has done an incredible amount of training. That's why it was hard for Dante to figure it out. But he still lacked one important trait compared to the 16-year-old guy in front of him. It's a talent. Dante sped up. Due to the surprise, Jin received a wound. Jin shouldn't let him make a few shallow cuts on him. The problem was the need to dodge every fatal blow. Because the pace was faster, Dante's stamina was drained faster. However, as Jin received more shallow wounds, he also gradually became exhausted. The loss of blood meant that he was also losing stamina. Conversely, he should not give him a single scratch until he gets tired. However, with the hope of winning, Jin gritted his teeth and continued to dodge. As long as he maintained this speed and parried at the last moment, Jin would be able to continue the fight for at least an hour. Dante wasn't an idiot. Although it seemed like Jin was losing and Dante was carefree, he couldn't forget about Jin's plan in any way. Eventually, he would find a way to replay young Rankandel's defense plan. Dodging attacks was crucial. Another cut on the shoulder. And while dodging the barrage of blows, Jin got a cut on his arm, almost releasing the sword. All the spectators who had put their money on Dante started shouting. In their eyes, Jin looked like he was being beaten without a chance, so they thought the battle would end soon. However, Dante finally understood. Jin knows that he has more stamina than him, so he drags out the battle. And finally, Dante realized Jin was using a pseudonym. Jin Rankandel. If he were a Rankandel, he would have incredible stamina that Dante didn't know about. Apart from the cuts on his hip, shoulder, and arm, if Jin had a normal body, he should have lost consciousness during the shock wave from the clash of swords. But if endurance is all Jin has, then he made a mistake. Dante decided to end the fight with one punch. Jin glanced at Dante, who quickly jumped away from him. What was that feeling? Dante's instincts told him that a careless attack was dangerous. Dante couldn't understand that what he felt was related to Jin's two suppressed abilities, shadow energy and magic. If Jin had used these abilities, Dante wouldn't even have had a chance. It was an innate terror that came from a stronger opponent. If he had attacked, he would have been flattened. Jin was finally able to catch his breath. Jin almost summoned the energy of the shadows. He was well so battered. He took off his coat and threw it away. Now it was Jin's turn to attack. Jin swung Bradamante with all his might and launched an attack. Dante's position faltered, prompting him to retreat. Jin only made one move in each attack. He practiced it 10,000 times with maximum effort every day, a blow that he could reproduce 3,000 times. Dante concluded that these were not easy blows. All of Jin's attacks had the same power as the first swing. Jin made the same vertical swing, and Dante couldn't easily get away from him. Every time Bradamante fell on him, it felt like a massive wall was pressing down on him. He had neither the time nor the energy to change his position. At this rate, in a few minutes Dante would have suffered an annoying defeat from the same blow. Therefore, he had to make a decision. Should he have given his all from the very beginning? Should he use the family's secret technique? However, he was faced with a dilemma. Dante didn't want to kill him, If he had used his secret technique, Jin would certainly have died. This prevented him from using it. Although they had only met a few days ago, Jin was a very important person to him. The savior, a worthy opponent, the mountain that the Heron family must overcome. The youngest son of the Rankandel family. Friend, Dante made a contradictory expression, sorting out his thoughts, and Jin knew exactly what he was feeling. The genie hit the ground. He looked into Dante's eyes before speaking. He's Jean Rankandel. He told Dante not to embarrass this fight. The two stopped moving, but the audience continued to shout. Despite the fact that the reception has been closed for a long time, with the hope of their bets, people have contributed to the loud noise. Jin's words were suppressed by the wild crowd, and they just stood and watched. Hearing these words, Dante was confused. In any situation, failure to harm the enemy meant the defeat of the warrior. It was shameful in front of the enemy and even more disrespectful in front of a worthy opponent. Is there anything more shameful than condescension from an opponent you value? The problem wasn't whether to use his secret technique. The question is whether he will try his best without hesitation. Ending the battle without it would be meaningless, regardless of whether he won or lost. Dante apologized for not showing his best side. Dante pointed his sword at Jin, intending to strike with the sword to show respect. Jin slammed his sword into Dante's sword, making a soft musical sound of metal hitting metal. And at that moment, they experienced a strange feeling. The screams became fainter, like an echo traveling in a canyon. Their surroundings blurred and gradually became dark. In their world, they were just the two of them, standing in front of each other. They both believed that either of them would make an exciting fight. They didn't need to talk to share this feeling. It was a common hallucination that sword masters fall into when fighting their opponent. They both took a deep breath at the same time. It was hard to tell who struck first when they clashed swords. Unlike their reverent tapping of swords at the beginning, the blows of the blades caused blinding sparks, sounds like explosions, screeching metal friction and echoing wind. Aura flickers everywhere, as if his exhaustion was a lie. Dante swung his sword more vigorously than before. Jin also channeled the remaining energy into his attacks. From the blows, blood and sand splattered all over the arena. At the moment when they were supposed to applaud, the crowd fell silent from shock. In their eyes, the two teenagers fighting looked like giants, and they did not dare to blink so as not to miss the moment of the fight. It's been 10 years since the arena opened, but they've never had a moment like this. The spectators who had originally come to watch the brutal slaughter were now blessed with the spectacle. They witnessed a duel between two talented knights. At this point, the gambling aspect of the arena became irrelevant. Of course, when the battle is over, someone will laugh and someone will cry. However, at this moment, everyone was startled by the fight. Dante had to reach his limit. So why has he held on until now? Dante Heron, a genius that manifests itself once in several centuries. He was a talent blessed by the gods. However, Dante was born with a fragile and weak body, which turned out to be an unsuitable vessel for such strength. How much effort did this short boy, who was born with below average physical data, put into training? How many times did he kneel in despair before overcoming his fatal flaw? Those who trained until death could notice the amount of effort of others. As for Jin in his past life, he remembered the seemingly eternal hell when he could not overcome the wall of the first rank, despite the fact that he had the blessed body of the Rankandels. So he could easily imagine Dante's past. He curled up in a ball in the dark training room, anxiously looking at his small and fragile body in the mirror, the one who trained and whipped himself until he was on the verge of death and exhaustion. And in all these moments, he never let go of his sword. So was his own past life. However, unlike Jin's past, Dante persisted in any difficulties. Dante's hoarse voice was born out of all the screams he made to overcome his problems. Dante began to tremble, from wandering through hopelessness to becoming the presumptive successor of the Heron family and the motivation to try your best after every tiring day, simply because he was one with his sword. Otherwise, even if he was a noble in the empire, life would just be a boring theatrical production. Dante was like that. Jean Rankandel, the 13th young lord of Rankandel. As each stroke of the blade vibrated through his entire body, Dante thought of Gina. I came to everything ready. The bloodline of every knight's dream. A solid body descended from a blessed bloodline. Jin, who became a knight of the 5th rank at the age of 15. Now he was 16 and he could meet Dante face to face. The most talented among the talented. Why then did he feel despair from him? Despite the fact that Jin was born in a world that is considered a paradise for knights, he behaved as if he was watching this heavenly world from afar. So why is he so desperate? Why, despite the fact that he was born with everything, there are such emotions in his blade? Isn't it because the youngest son is far from being the heir to the throne? No, he's like an unearthly being. He doesn't need to mess with the hierarchy. Is it just to become the best in the world? Or is it because he has lived many days in hopelessness and despair? Did he mean to say that he had more days of suffering? Dante couldn't even remember how long he had endured to be where he was now. How much did he sink into despair? How many times have you been depressed? How many times have you pulled yourself together? I can't count it. As he applied force to the hilt of his sword, Dante felt cracks creep across the bones of his arms. Excruciating pain shot through his body, but he didn't flinch. Every time he swung his sword, his bones suffered from new cracks, but his movements did not change at all. Although his stance began to fall apart, Dante did not neglect his weak body. While Jin could feel the sword closer than his skin, he could feel Dante's exhaustion through every clash of their swords. As soon as he realized that his victory was close, Jin felt more anger than joy. Dante's body was collapsing. Now it's Jin's turn to decide. Kill him or not. He didn't need to think long. To withdraw the sword would be an insult to Dante. Jin made a horizontal swing. Dante deflected the blow, but his body trembled, barely able to keep his balance. Dante felt other bones breaking in his body. Before he could turn his head and follow Jin's movements, Bradamante had already struck a second blow. Fortunately, the blade hesitated. Jin stopped his sword inches from Dante's throat. In fact, Dante had already passed out before Jin's second attack. Dante fell to the dirty floor. Jin blinked quickly and sighed heavily, looking down at him. Time seemed to stop in the silence that followed. At the moment when he tried to call a doctor or anyone who could treat Dante, one of the spectators jumped out of the spectator area into the arena. Veridin knelt beside Dante and cast a spell. Baradin consecutively cast 3 healing spells, demonstrating his insane talent for magic. However, at this very moment, only Dante was bothering Jin. Veridin's expression didn't look important when he chanted the spell. Less than 10 seconds had passed, and his entire body was wet with sweat. Jin wondered how much mana he had channeled. Despite the fact that he used a spell that could instantly heal a fatal wound, Dante's eyes did not open. It was too late. The line has been passed when it was possible to cure with one magic. Dante's insides were a mess. Not a single bone was intact. In fact, his broken body was burning with an aura. The magic of recovery in this state will only increase the pain. There was only one way to keep Dante alive. Veridin told Jin to listen carefully. What's going to happen now has to stay between them. As soon as they saw the object that Veridin showed, the guards' faces turned white with fear. They began to dissuade him. Young Zippel ordered them to cover them with cloaks. The guards bit their lips and surrounded Veridin, Jin and Dante with their cloaks. The crowd began to chatter, whispering among themselves because of the sudden turn of events. No one hated Veridin's actions after seeing the Zippel insignia on the guards' cloaks. As soon as the Zippel coat of arms was revealed, everyone, including the pirates, became quiet and calm as a flock of sheep. Even the host, Cosmos, did not dare to enter the ring to interfere with the current state of affairs. Did they come to kill Paul, knowing that he was a Rankandel? If they get into this, they will surely die. The Cosmos shouted for everyone to close their eyes and ears. It was a very ridiculous situation, but the audience really listened to his orders. Not a single person smiled or laughed. The Zippel family was not a force they wanted to face. Veridin grinned. Space caught the atmosphere. Veridin pulled out some kind of gem. At first glance, it was a spherical ruby. However, upon closer inspection, it had a much deeper shade of red, as if it was blood pressed together, and they discovered an unspeakably strange energy in him. Jin had seen it before, but he couldn't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't what he saw physically, but what he saw through a textbook when he was a student. Veridin said it was numerous blood. The moment Veridin called his name, Jin's jaw dropped. The god of hope, who disappeared due to several incidents before the emergence of the holy state of Vankala. All that was left before the disappearance were 8 tears and 100 drops of blood, and people waged a bloodbath to collect these artifacts. The tear of Numerous was an object that could resurrect the dead. On the other hand, it is impossible to resurrect the dead with the help of the blood of Numerous. However, she could easily heal any injury or illness. 70 drops of blood have been used so far. At first it was the most wanted artifact, but as it became rarer and rarer, its existence became a myth. And one of these mythical objects shone in front of him.